Hello and welcome to the Big League Show. As always, I'm Connor Somerville, joined by Aiden Silliphant, who's above me this time. And this week, we are going to be very hockey heavy. And to be very hockey heavy, we are joined by potentially the best person in terms of prospects in our program, Raine Hernandez. Raine, how are you doing today?
First off, that was one hell of an intro. I'm really humbled and I appreciate it. I'm doing great. The NHL Draft is today, and we've been waiting quite a long time for it because of this pandemic. But I'm excited, and I'm excited to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're
No
excited to have
problem.
you. You've done quite a lot in terms of prospect writing and covering all that stuff as my stalker work is uncovered. Um, but we'll dive into that in a second, and we'll dive into the rest of the draft as well, probably in another call because he's done a lot in terms of writing work, which I want to dive into. But let's start off with the question that we begin each interview with, and that is, what is your first memory of sports? And then what is your first memory of sport media?
So I think my first memory of sports is probably just putting on a pair of skates for the first time. I started playing hockey when I was 3 years old, and then I played competitively, my entire life. So, all of my, great memories have been with the sport of hockey, and I, give all my credit to that. While, my first memory of, sport media is just simply watching TSN and watching, Sports Center every morning, before you go to school. You eat your breakfast and watch Sports Center, and that was a tradition, or that was just like something that we would do every day. And I'm glad it brought me here, and I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, and I want to dive into that in terms of what you did before you came to Ryerson, before you applied. So maybe take us through what your high school experience and like middle school experience was covering sports, because you did do some sports reporting before you came to Ryerson.
Yeah, so I think it was probably grade 7 or 8 when I had the idea of wanting to be in this field. So I made it like a really big goal for myself to Ryerson Sport Media was a really big program that I wanted to get into. My neighbor was actually part of the first class that got into the program. So when I saw him get into the program, it was like a big goal of mine, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps, sort of. So it started with that, and then I just did the little things and working my way up. In grade 10, I started writing, on my own with my own blog, and then knowing, sport media was such a hard program to get into. I know, you two have probably dealt with it as well, that you guys felt that you needed to do something to, get yourself into the program. And for me, I started a online newspaper for my school. So I'd be writing about just the athletics that we'd have, because we had a lot of decent sports teams. So I wanted to cover that and, shed light for the people in our school and, what we were doing in the athletic side for Streetsville.
Yeah, and that was the Eye of the Tiger, correct?
Yeah, you did your research.
Yes, I did. Is that still going on now, or did that sort of stop once you left?
So what happened, funny story, they wanted to, continue it when I graduated, but they ended up screwing it up. So I was like, you know what, just don't do it at all. I don't want it to hurt the legacy of Eye of the Tigers, because with, our graduating class, we didn't really have a big high school. It was only like 700, 800 kids. So our graduating class was pretty small, and a lot of the people in that class agreed that you shouldn't give it over to someone because they just might make it into something that, just hinders what we did together.
I completely agree with that. In my high school, we did like a TV show, and we were considering like giving away like our Instagram account to like the next year.
Yeah,
And we're just
exactly.
like, nah, I think we don't want to ruin that legacy as well, because we hit the nail on the head with it. We don't want anyone to ruin it. But you mentioned your neighbor getting into the program. What kind of advice was he telling you to try and help you get in, or did he teach you anything at all about the program?
Yeah, so there was actually two of them. So one of them was my next door neighbor, and then his best friend got into the program. He was a part of the first class, and then my other neighbor, he lived like a few streets down. He's in fourth year. So the other one that's in fourth year right now, he actually helped me through the entire process, the interview process. Even the day of my interview, he came up to me, told me like it was going to be okay, because I'm sure you guys are really nervous, because I was definitely nervous for that interview process. But, as for like, about the program. They just talked about, how, you know, the opportunities that you're given in sport media, the different outlets that you can try out. And the one thing they pretty much told us is just to try everything and see what you like, because you don't know, your opinion could change from year 1 to year 4, so be sure to try everything out.
Yeah, it's good advice. Do you remember what day you interviewed and who interviewed you?
Yeah, I think it was a few days. So I do remember what happened because but Michigan got that buzzer beater in the 2018 tournament. So it was the same week. And then, so I wore a Michigan golf shirt. And then my interviewer was Dan Berlin. So when I walked in, he was like, wow, you're a big Michigan fan. Congrats on the shot, blah, blah, blah. And then the interview just ended up being just talking about Michigan sports.
That's sick. That's great.
Yeah, I like that. It's a trend we've heard so far, as it just turns into a conversation about sports or about like media in general. And I guess wearing the golf shirt was probably a bit of a help for you, and
Oh yeah,
dressed up a little bit, so you showed a bit of professionalism, I guess, which is always a good thing.
Would you have worn the golf shirt if Michigan hadn't won that game?
Ooh, that's a good question. because that NCAA tournament run was so big and so shocking to me, because we didn't really have like an elite team. I probably still would have worn it just because I bleed maize and blue, so I think so. But because I know that I didn't want to wear a shirt and tie because wearing that downtown is such a drag, and it's like going on the train wearing a suit is so uncomfortable. So that was a big reason that I didn't want to wear it. So yeah, I probably still would have worn it.
It's a good touch. It's a good touch.
Yeah, it's a great touch.
It's a good conversation starter, which is huge in the interviews. Do you remember before the interview, you had to do that little written component, like you had 15 minutes to type it out. Do you remember what your question was for that?
Yeah, I think the question was, it was name a sports documentary or a sports film that really inspired you to be in the program. So for me, I'm a really big fan of the ESPN 30 for 30s. So I wrote about the Bad Boys, and it was the Bill Simmons documentary that he wrote with Jalen Rose. That was probably my favorite documentary growing up. I think I watched it like a million times. I'm a big Joe Dumars fan. A lot of people like the Isaiah Thomas and the Dennis Rodman of that team, but for me, it was Joe Dumars. So I wrote about that. And then when Dan Berlin also read that, he also brought that up a little bit too. So I guess it's the Detroit area that got me into sport media. So, I know Aiden, you like that because you're a Lions fan. So the Detroit area helps us out.
So you're a Lions fan potentially? No, you're a Colts fan.
I'm a Colts fan.
Hey, you don't want to be a Lions fan.
Yeah, I do hate that people sleep on Matthew Stafford. I do think he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL. He just hasn't had that opportunity.
Yeah, he hasn't had the greatest year as well, but that's another conversation.
I know.
Maybe a little later in the show. Yeah. I do want to know though, how did you get into supporting just these myriad of teams? Like I have the list here. It's all over the place. You like Michigan Wolverines, the Blackhawks, Indianapolis Colts, the Pacers, and Cardiff City, which I didn't know you were a soccer guy. But
I'm somewhat a soccer guy. It's every now and then I'll watch some championship division soccer. I mean, when we were in first year, I would watch the EPL. Cardiff just absolute steamrolled every weekend, but it's part of the struggle. So I'll start off with Chicago. So when I was 7, I being from Mississauga, I'd watch a lot of Mississauga Ice Dogs games and the Mississauga St. Michael's Majors, which is a big reason why I'm in a Prospects today. But I watched London come into town, and I saw Patrick Kane for the first time. So I told myself after watching him play, I was like, wherever he goes, I'm going to become a fan. So when he got drafted to Chicago, I hopped on that bandwagon. So ever since I was 7, 8 years old, I've been with the Blackhawks. And after the 3 cups, I was told I was a bandwagoner, but I hopped on when they sucked, so it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then with the Colts, same thing. Peyton Manning Super Bowl, I was probably 6 or 7 when he won. So first time watching football. So after that happened, been a Colts fan ever since. Andrew Luck is still my goat, so I still have to rep him. And then meanwhile with Michigan, it was so pretty much with hockey, I'd always loved the Michigan colors, so I always gravitated towards them. But it was mostly the NCAA tournament run in 2013 with Trey Burke. That's what put me over the top and become a big Michigan fan. And then that led into basketball too. I chose Indiana as my favorite team because they had Michigan colors. They had a jersey that was, relatable to Michigan. So it was also that. So I guess, when people ask about my favorite teams, they think I'm a Midwest guy. So I guess I am.
So you're saying Cardiff City wasn't because of Junior Hoylett?
No, it wasn't because of Junior Hoylett. It was because so when I was in grade 11, we went to I played rugby and we went on a rugby tour to England, Wales, and France. And
Wow.
Cardiff was by far the best city I've ever been to, best atmosphere. So I ended up getting some Cardiff City merch, and I've been supporting them ever since.
Nice. What rugby did you play? 15s, 13s, or 7s?
So our rugby school was actually our school for rugby was huge. We played 15s, and then we'd also play 7s in the fall. Just because our coach and our gym teacher, he actually coaches the U18 team,
Oh,
the
wow.
team.
Okay.
So rugby has just been in our school forever, and then we all hopped on it, and it's one hell of a sport. It's really underrated for sure.
And what position are you?
I was a scrum half, and then
Nice.
then after a few years, I switched to inside center, and then in my grade 12 year, I didn't want to get hit anymore, so I just became the manager.
That's a great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize you'd played rugby. That's pretty interesting. So have you been to many Wolfpack games, which I probably won't dive into that entire situation because it's very confusing, but have you been to many of those games or?
Sadly, I haven't. Just
haven't.
because so one of my best friends from high school, he's actually on their practice team. So whenever
Okay.
the jump up, I'll be able to watch him play. But my rugby nowadays is mostly just watching university rugby. So I'll watch Queens, UVic, the big schools. And then with, the men's league here, Mississauga Blues, they got some good guys. Our best player is Kainoa Lloyd, and he's on the national team. So he was also a Streetsville grad. So I like to watch him from time to time.
Huh. I really didn't realize you had that background. I knew you had the roller hockey background, which we'll dive into in a second, but I didn't realize that you were a big rugby guy. And it sounds like you're just a big youth sports kind of. It's like that middle ground between youth sports and professional.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you really get into that? Was it through the Steelheads or was it through some other sort of avenue?
With youth sports or just in?
With like youth sports and prospects, I guess.
So yeah, with prospects, it pretty much started with the Steelheads. I sort of like junior hockey more than the NHL from time to time. So I'd always follow, the NHL draft and, always follow the top prospects. And, growing up playing roller hockey and also, playing ice hockey, I always looked at the, older age groups and see who were the best players there. I was always a big fan of that. So that's what really got me into prospects. And then, with the youth sports and, just the university athletics, it's just, I feel like it's a different vibe with it. And that's what sort of attracted me to do it because, pro sports, it's a really big fandom and, it's really serious from time to time. But, with the university players and the junior hockey players, they're playing for the love of the game and not for money. So that's something that I really enjoyed as well.
And we can hear your dog going absolutely mental.
Yeah,
Which...
sorry. That's actually my neighbor's dog. He's in the backyard. But,
oh, wow. Lost dog.
Yeah, my bad.
It's one of those little yippers that are just very annoying. I got a border collie downstairs, so you might hear him bark every once in a while, but those are...
Holy smokes.
It's all good.
Let's sort of dive into actually now your Ryerson-related work, because you mentioned your youth sports work, and you write for youthsports.ca. So what has that sort of entailed for you, and what have you sort of covered for that?
So what started with youth sports was just in first year, I knew that it was really important to, do, different things and, get out of my comfort zone. So I started with the eye opener and started just covering, games every week and, doing it nonstop. And then ultimately it led me to better opportunities and bigger opportunities with youth sports. And with youth sports, they primarily have me just doing feature articles at the moment. And obviously right now it's a little tough because, the youth sports season has been canceled and postponed. So it was mostly, I've written a few articles for them. It was one of them was during the U Sports All-Star team versus the World Junior team. So I got to do an article on that, and then also another hockey article with Brett Jacklin, who was the youngest U Sports player this year. So I got to do that. With U Sports, it's just been a really cool opportunity. They've taught me some real cool stuff and really some important things in terms of improving my writing, and it's been really great.
What kind of advice would you give to someone looking to, join the Eye Opener or join usports.ca as a writer? Something that maybe you've learned throughout your tenure working for them. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think the one thing that in terms of Eye Opener, it's just to, do as much as you can. Just participate as much as you can. And whenever you have free time, just put in the work and, write just game recaps, because ultimately it helps, helps your writing, helps your vocabulary, helps, generate some ideas looking at different quotes. And then ultimately you'll want to do more. And then it'll lead to other opportunities in terms of writing, like feature articles, which is something that I've really, grown to love and love to do. So I think, the main thing is just to participate and get into, just doing extra stuff.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a much better question than I was going to ask. So I guess with the U Sports stuff, has that opened up more opportunities for you, or was that like a bit of a foot in the door, would you say?
Yeah, I think so, because U Sports is such a big company in terms of sport media, especially for our program, because I guess we're like the biggest school in terms of media stuff. And I mean, it's given me a lot of opportunities, and I've gotten to meet some really cool people, and gotten to improve my writing in ways that I never thought I would be able to do in this program, because I thought sport media was also just a lot of on-air stuff when I first got in here and whatnot, and not a lot of writing. So it's been really cool.
Yeah, and I guess we can dive into more of your outside of writers. Actually, we're going to stick with it one more time, because you did something that I don't think you do anymore. You did a show with Cameron Tobin, Simon Kiszczuk, and Drew Hardiman called Manalytics.
Yeah.
You started that with Spirit Live. What was that like for you? And do you really see that coming back? Do you see you doing more radio in the future? Or do you think that was sort of your only endeavor into the radio sphere?
Yeah, so we did one episode of the Manalytics, and then I think we just felt that the chemistry wasn't really there. It was a little too bland, so to speak, just because we talk about a lot of different sports, which is, good at times, but it just in terms of our group, Simon was strictly pretty much a soccer guy, doesn't really dive into other sports. While, Drew and I were really big on every sport. And then overall, just the chemistry wasn't there. And then also it was during second semester when, first year was getting a little hectic with Curtis's Friday class, and then the production theory Tuesday mornings. That class was absolutely brutal. So I think it caught up to us, but I think in the future, I do want to get into podcasting and radio a lot more, in the system. I know, Connor, you're a part of that. So we're just hoping to start that up soon. And I'm really excited for, just podcasting in general. I listen to just a lot of stuff. So it's something that I really want to dive into and obviously improve.
All right, 2 questions. 1, when do you plan to get not Manalytics in the system off the ground? So like, when can people look forward to that? And 2, what are your top 3 podcasts?
Okay, I like those questions. So the first question within the system, we were thinking about doing our first episode before the draft, but since this draft process has been so long and everyone's heard the same prospects over and over again, I didn't think it'd be a good idea to just say the same things that people have been hearing. So we were thinking after the draft and maybe do a wrap up. So hopefully pretty soon. I know Kyle really wants to do it, so he'll be looking forward to that. I think top 3 podcasts though. So number 1, I'm probably going to put the Joe Rogan Experience number 1, but specifically is MMA stuff. That's what I listen to the most. Number 2 right now is probably Fantasy Football Focus. So Field Yates and Matthew Berry. Fantasy football, I breathe right now, so I probably do that. And then number 3 is good. I think
the Big League.
Dude,
nobody's putting us at number 3 in the top 3 podcasts.
Hey, he was struggling there. I tell him.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's typically right now I'm listening to all MMA podcasts, not like hockey podcasts basketball podcasts. I'll probably put JJ Redick podcast.
The JJ Redick one.
Yeah, he's got a
Nice.
really good one right now.
So you don't listen to much. You don't listen to many hockey podcasts then?
No, usually all my hockey stuff I research on my own, and then I'll listen to a few takes every now and then. But for podcasts, it's mostly fantasy football and mixed martial arts. That's what I usually listen to.
Yeah, I liked listening to Joe Rogan on the subway on the way to
Oh yeah,
way to and back, because he just does 4-hour-long podcasts, so you can do one in an entire week. But you need to be careful on the podcasts you pick from him.
Yeah,
because there's some of them where, maybe not. But yeah, those are some good selections. I haven't listened to any of them. I should listen to the JJ Redick one because I've heard really good things about it. I've listened. I don't know if you listened to the Danny Green one. I think that's pretty good. Inside the Green Room.
I listened to a few episodes during the Raptors playoff run. During the Lakers playoff run, I sort of haven't. But the JJ Redick podcast, I listened to a little bit when he was on the Ringer. But once he went, on his own, that's when I started listening to it like religiously.
Yeah, those are some good selections. I'm excited to see what you'll do in the podcast sphere. But let's jump back to some of your actual experience. Not in writing, because I want to get into the McKeans, puck preps, your stuff with Oakville Blades in a second. What I want to talk about is your roller hockey stuff, because there are not very many people who, A, know what roller hockey is, B, pay attention to it, and C, only know it not because of Nasher. So how did you find out about roller hockey? Like, when did that sort of start for you? And how did your career get to the point where you're going to a national championship representing Canada?
Yeah, so it all started actually with my neighbor. So I played, hockey competitively growing up, and in the summers I didn't know what to do. So my neighbor was playing roller hockey for a while, and then so I got into it, fell in love with it instantly, and then right after that I instantly started joining tournaments, and then it brought me to experiences that I would never imagine, traveling across the country, the U.S. And then, it's just, it's overall a different game too. It's 4-on-4, no contact either, and no offsides, no icing. So it's a different, type of hockey, sort of possession, sort of what, the present day NHL is looking like nowadays. So just an overall better way to showcase your skills and, your speed. It's a more skillful game, I feel.
And you started doing some more writing content for them as well. You covered the North American Roller Hockey Championships. That's a mouthful. As a staff writer and multimedia content producer. So what was that experience like for you? And I don't know if you were the only person there, if there were more people, but what was that working like, either as a solo or in that sort of team? I believe you did this before you would come to Ryerson.
Yeah, so I started it when NARCH is like the biggest roller hockey tournament in the world, and teams from all over the world just go and participate in the event. And NARCH, so I wanted to write for them, and they were looking, for someone to cover the event. So I wanted to write while I was playing. So I'd play in a few divisions, and then I'd also write for them. So I'd be at the rink the entire day throughout the entire event, and then it worked out well. And then last year, they finally promoted me, and they brought me out to California for one of the events, and I got to spend 10 days there filming content and also writing. So it gave me a different, perspective on the sport media landscape and being a content producer, and obviously doing it for a sport I really love and I'm really passionate about. It's, something I've always wanted.
And how big do you think roller hockey will get in the future? Is it something that's going to stay fairly niche, or is it going to be on the level of the NHL one day?
I don't think it will ever get to the NHL level. Back in the day, there used to be a professional roller hockey league, but I do think it will get a little bit bigger just because of the players that, started out playing roller hockey or still play roller hockey and have gone on to the NHL and, done great things. Like, Pat Maroon's a big roller hockey guy. He played his entire life. His kid's playing it now. And, he just won back-to-back Stanley Cups. So it's a really good look for that, our small community. And we all have like a few players also that's in the NHL that have played the sport. So as long as, we still keep getting guys that, continue to play in the summers, I think the sport will continue to grow.
I think especially this summer, there's been a big jump in how many people are going to play roller hockey because you can't go on the ice. And I work at Pro Hockey Life. We've been sold out of roller hockey rollerblades for like the entire summer. Everybody was coming in right away to get them. So yeah, I think there's going to be a big boost of how many people play roller hockey in the future. And the pandemic, it helps. Like that's the one advantage, I guess, of the pandemic. It might get more people involved in a sport that is up and coming now. So yeah, that's really cool, Raine. That's really cool. How was the experience playing on a national level with Canada?
Yeah, so it all started with playing for the provincial team. So there's a big tournament called State Wars, and it's in the States every year. So our age group would go and play against the other states, and we ended up winning it a few times. So that was pretty cool. And then once the national team came for tryouts for the national team, I thought I had a really good tryout, and then I ended up making the team. And the event was actually in China, so I got to play hockey in China, which I never would have thought of in my million years. So that's sort of a once in a lifetime experience that I always like to think of, and the opportunities that it gives you traveling all over the world is pretty cool.
Yeah, and my cousin had a bit of a similar situation. She played in the CWHL before they folded.
Okay.
And she was on Markham Thunder, I guess they were at that point. She was on both Brampton and Markham, but she got to go with them as a third goalie to China, all expenses paid. So she wrote about that experience, and it sounds like it was very interesting and unique going to a country that isn't necessarily a huge hockey country.
Yeah.
It's like going to the Olympics.
It's a huge culture shock for sure too, just because it's just a different lifestyle as well, and you see a bunch of mopeds on the side of the road. It's different, and for my teammates, it was they're the only they're the only white guys there. Everyone else is Asian, whereas myself, I'm Asian, but like I sort of not, because I couldn't speak the language. It was just pretty crazy, and I wouldn't have imagined playing hockey in China in my million years.
That's really interesting. And we're going to dive into your prospect work in a second, but we only have 4 minutes ish left on this call, and you have a lot of prospect work, which we have to dive into. But I'm going to wrap it up on this one thing that or I guess we could technically do it in two if you're quick, but let's start with Penalty Box Radio. You did a couple articles for them. What was that like for you?
Yeah. So once again, in first year, I just wanted to do as much as I can, try to get into the prospect bubble. So I ended up writing for Penalty Box Radio. They're pretty big in the Southeast, or in Nashville area, and they got a really big audience. So that got me connected with someone here that has helped me throughout my entire process of being on prospect Twitter, being a prospects guy. So I got to write a few articles for them, cover the World Juniors, and do a few prospect work for them. Ultimately, it was just some way to get my foot in the door and showcase some of my work to other news sites, and ultimately it gave me the opportunity. Also gave me a lot of good connections, so I'm always thankful for them.
And finally, to wrap up this little portion before we take a quick break for our listeners, that'll be half a second. For us, it'll be probably 5 minutes. But this Flip Snack book thing I found.
Yeah.
What is that? Why did you create it? Can you give me a bit of a rundown on that?
Yeah, for sure. So this was a really big project of mine this year. So the top prospects in the 2004 age group, I sort of had a connection with them. Rucker McGroarty, Hunter Brustowitz, and Pano Fimis. Those are three top guys in the age group. Pano went second overall in the OHL, and Rucker is one of the best players on the NTDP team this year. So I knew them. I knew that the Youth Olympics was this year, so it's a really big event. It's only every 4 years, obviously, and only a certain amount of kids get to experience it. So I knew I wanted to share their stories and their reactions of playing on the national team and playing at that level. So I wanted to write a series of articles for them and also preview the entire event as well, because not a lot of people talk about the Youth Olympics, and not a lot of people know it's a thing that exists. So that's something I wanted to show to the hockey community. So I decided to make a magazine, and just also a way to practice my my feature writing and learning how to connect with people. So I just ended up creating a magazine, and it turned out pretty well. And it's been I think it's really helped me into elevating what my account can be.
Hmm.
And
Let's
Hunter's going to Michigan.
Yeah, he is. Go Blue.
You excited about that?
As well. Obviously, yeah. Michigan knows how to recruit hockey players. That's for sure.
All right, I want to keep talking about this, but we have to take a quick break because we have a minute left on this call, and I don't think you'll have enough time to sort of answer the question I want to ask you. But yeah, we'll be right back very quickly with Raine Hernandez, and we'll get to the draft stuff soon because the trade just broke and the Leafs traded down. But we'll be right back. All right, and we're back to discuss, or I guess finish discussing, the Flip Snack. Is it a Flip Snack?
Yeah.
That's how you pronounce it? Okay. It's Flip Snack, book magazine that you created. What was that interview process like? What was it like reaching out to these guys and getting quotes or getting information from them? How easy was that? And were you able to do it just on your own without being affiliated with anyone?
Yeah. So it's actually pretty cool how it worked out. So I actually coached against Rutger and Hunter in roller hockey, of all places. And, Pano, the other guy I interviewed, was the guy that was on my team. So it all worked out in a way. And then
Oh God.
Oh, I think it's lagging.
Oh no, you're back. You're
I'm
good.
back. Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is my internet connection's unstable. Here, I'll turn off the data or my Wi-Fi on my phone. Hopefully that helps. So where did I cut out there? I'll get back into it.
Two guys you played or coached
You
against,
coached them.
and
Coached against,
you
yeah.
coached for.
Okay, yeah.
Interesting
So
situation.
yeah, I coached against them, and then one day they came into the hockey shop I was working at, which is pretty weird because they're from the States. So it turns out Rutgers, like his dad's from here in Mississauga. So I ended up hitting them up after. I said, next time you guys are in Canada, I'd like to interview you guys for something I want to do. And they're like, for sure. So a few months later, they came by for a holiday Christmas tournament in Toronto. So I went by to go do scouting and then also, watch them play. And then after that, I did the interview process with them. And then I ended up making the magazine before the Youth Olympics started. So that was pretty cool.
How much work did it take? Like how much time do you think?
Yeah, it took a little bit because it was a little tough at first because I didn't have illustrators, so I was just pretty much making a magazine from scratch on my own. So that was the tough part, and then also making the articles and then getting some other scouts to give their insights on other players as well. So it took a little bit of time, and on top of balancing schoolwork and work, it was a little bit, but I'm pretty happy with the final result and it's led me since.
Yeah, and it looks good. We'll link it down below if you want to go and check it out. It's, I think 4 to 5 pages, maybe 6.
Yeah, it's not too bad, but it was pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it was an interesting find. I didn't expect to see some sort of magazine thing that you created. I thought it was going to be some random person who wasn't you, but yeah, it was interesting to find that. Let's sort of wrap up our discussion on you because we have a lot of draft and hockey stuff to get to, and I'm looking forward to that. But let's sort of wrap up with your work that you've done with Puck Preps, OHL Network, Oakville Blades, and McKean's. So I guess we'll start with Puck Preps because it's something I know very little about. But what do you do for them exactly? Are you a media person or are you like a writer?
Yeah, so I'm sort of like a jack of all trades for them. I guess it's like my same role with the Oakville Blades. So the OHL Network, my main role was to cover the Steelheads, but also cover the OHL Draft. So that meant watching, the minor midget players that are, prospects for OHL teams. And then, so I did that for the entire year, and that, led me to a few feature articles and whatnot. And that's what I think ultimately helped me in just improving my writing all the way, and also just improving like the audience that I had, because a lot of people ended up tuning into my content after. So once OHL Network actually disbanded a few months ago, I knew I wanted to continue the OHL draft coverage. So Puck Preps is a really big site that's up and coming that I really want. That they came up to me and they wanted to, partner up with me and get some work done. So it's actually pretty cool. The Puck Preps people are also the same people at Wagon Hockey, which is a pretty big Instagram account now. So that's why it all works out together. So for them, I'm actually, doing the same roles I'm doing as I did at OHL Network, which is pretty much, doing feature articles and talking to some of the big prospects, but also doing some scouting on, some of the top players in the entire province.
Let's talk about the OHL network then now, because I believe Kennedy also writes for them. I think Kyle does or might do. I'm not sure if he's just working for the London Knights or also OHL network. But there are a few people in our program who do it. So how did you really get affiliated with them? How did you either reach out? Did they reach out to you? How did that sort of situation all play out?
Yeah, so once again, in first year, I wanted to continue just to do things and keep myself occupied. So I saw OHL Network was starting something up, so I just applied. I said I wanted to do OHL draft stuff and also the Steelheads, and then they got back to me. I ended up joining. So the opportunities that I got from it was pretty cool. I got to write for an article for Elite Prospects. That was pretty cool. And then it led me to building connections and also just help my writing and the junior hockey stratosphere. So overall, it really helped me out in just my growth overall as a writer, and also just building connections and just helping my audience grow. So I give all the credit to that. I wish they still stuck together. I don't know what the future is, but good thing I'm at Puck Preps now, so I can keep that coverage going.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how these sort of smaller networks survive and how they do with COVID and no hockey being played. But what would you say has been the biggest takeaway from working at Puck Preps and the OHL network for you?
I think it's overall just, how passionate people are about, junior hockey. I knew that a lot of people like to focus on the junior hockey, stratosphere and the environment and, all the players that are coming up. But I didn't know that it was that big. And, there's a lot of people that really enjoy junior hockey entirely. And now that I've been a part of it for more than a year, it's pretty cool. It's pretty special.
And this is just a random question. How many connections do you think you've made if you had to estimate a number?
I think, I don't know. I'd probably say about like legitimately like people that I talk to would probably, I'd say 50 maybe, like just around there. I think just overall, just, connecting with people through my articles and through my work and, through my opinions, you get to, meet other people and see what their opinions are like, or they're asking me questions. It's all over the place, but I do think I do have a little bit of an audience, and, they help me get better, and I also want to provide content for them.
And I guess we'll sort of wrap up because I want to finish on McKean's, because I think this is the most recent sort of venture you've made. But let's talk about the Oakville Blades, because we talked about it a bit with Patrick, because he's getting involved with them as well. Mm-hmm. Can you specify what your role is? It has on your LinkedIn, you have head of social media and a scout, but I think Patrick said you might be doing some play-by-play color and some more stuff. So maybe explain a bit more.
A little bit of everything. So it all started, beginning in a second year. One of, a friend of mine played on the team, and their social media was absolutely awful. Just the worst. It looked like they would do graphics on Microsoft Paint, literally. And, so they needed an improvement. And then my friend recommended me, so I ended up getting the job. And then I started building up their social media again and helping that out. And then overall, the owner knew that I was into the prospects and I do my scouting. So he asked me to do some, scouting on some minor midget guys that we'd be interested in. And then ultimately it led me to the opportunity of, being a scout for them full time. So now I'm looking at players for them, sending them video, and also still doing the social media part. So I'm still doing a lot for them. It's just sort of like a jack of all trades type thing as well. And then the play-by-play and color is just every now and then if one guy's hurt or anything, or if the one guy's sick or feeling under the weather, I just jump right in. And then so since I'm sort of a part of the head of social media, Patrick wanted to sort of help his writing as well. So I sort of gave him that platform. I said, come on by.
Huh, that's really interesting. Cool. It's cool to see you two sort of pushing each other forward. And I will link to the Oakville Blades down below as well in the description. We'll link to most of his stuff down below, including his McKean's, and which we'll dive into. U Sports, his Twitter, which is, I think you have 1,200 followers now.
Yeah,
Uh,
1200. Yeah, it was a little weird at first because I lost my account.
yeah.
Oh
So,
yeah, someone was saying that. Yeah, someone said that on a
yeah,
previous episode.
yeah. So I lost my account because I had Twitter when I was 12. So I lied about my birthday, like a few days before, I guess. And
Uh,
one day I just wanted to change it because I was like, you know what? I'm going to be honest and share my actual birth date. I changed it and then they locked me out of my account. So honestly enough, this is probably the first really weird thing I've ever done is I actually contacted a mystery hacker. I hit him up. I gave him $50 in Amazon money, and then he got me in my account back.
Wow.
I was gonna ask, how did you get it back? Thinking you took some giant loopholes to get through Twitter and the Twitter support, and you just paid a hacker, which
That's
fair.
commitment right there.
Yeah, no,
$50.
Twitter support is absolutely awful. They have no idea what they're doing. They never hit anyone back, which is pretty
Yeah.
weird because a lot of people use Twitter. So I thought they put some money into their support group. So yeah, I had to do whatever it takes to get my account back because it took me a long time to get to 1,200 followers.
Yeah, but you created a new one in that stopgap, and I think you got up to like hundreds of followers within a couple days, right?
Yeah, I got to I think 500, and then I started to use it for like a week or so, and then one day I saw my Twitter account was back. I'm like, whoa, what's this? And then I returned back. So thank God.
It was a risky investment then if you didn't know if you were going to get your account back.
I know exactly. I know. I thought I was gonna get bamboozled. I thought the guy was just gonna take my $50 of Amazon money and run with it, but he ended up getting my account back. So kudos to him.
I really like the username too, Bringer of Rain.
Oh yeah,
Big,
yeah.
big Josh Donaldson guy.
Josh Donaldson guy, yeah. So, once he got traded to the Jays, I was a fan of him on Oakland before, but not as big. But when I saw his username, I knew I had to switch to that. And then also his favorite or his number is 20, and my favorite number is 20. So it all worked out.
Nice.
It's a pretty,
Perfect.
I guess, a lot of people like to mention the Bringer of Rain because it's pretty creative in terms of user accounts. So I'll take it.
It is definitely one of the more creative options that are out there. It's not just somebody's name, which I like, but let's sort of wrap up on your McKean's hockey stuff so we can get into the actual draft and meat of the sports and all that. But basically, for people who don't know, they're a prospects website, and they're one of the more respected out there. I'd say up there with like some of the insiders and McKenzie and Button. So how did you get involved with them? What do you do for them specifically? Do you write or do you run their social media? What is your role with McKean's?
Yeah, so it all started with my OHL draft coverage. So it led to a big account on Twitter is OHL Prospects, which is Brock Otten. He's been really helpful throughout the entire process. So he actually invited me on to be a part of his big OHL draft polls and NHL draft polls and like the media polls, and he asked for opinions. So I got to do that. I've been reading them like my entire life, being on Twitter. So it was an honor to be a part of it. And then ultimately, he works at McKean, so he led me into that opportunity. And McKean's is also one of those companies, while really respected and also, one of the big hockey prospect websites, they're also really outdated. So they're looking to make a new makeover and a new switch into their social media. So they asked me to come on and, run their social media page. And then once this draft process ends, I'll probably end up doing some feature writing and some scouting reports for them as well. So it's a little bit of everything there, but those are the two main things. And that's how I got with McKean's.
So how long have you been officially a part of McKean's then?
I probably say since May or
Okay.
June. I think that's when it started. Yeah.
That's a pretty good timeline just after the pandemic hit. So you're looking for stuff to do probably.
Yeah, exactly.
But our final question, unless Aiden wants to ask something, is we have a couple more questions, but final on your future. What do you want to do in sport media? What role do you want to fill?
I feel like I've done like a lot of stuff, like, just to overall just build the portfolio and build my skill set. But I think the main thing that I've been like, the one thing is just being a feature writer and being a writer. I think that's overall my best skill and something that I still want to continue on improving. And was always my goal from the beginning, was to be a journalist and to be a writer. And I think that's where I want to go into the most, for sure.
Interesting.
I think I got one more question, and we normally end off with this question.
Beat me to it.
What would be, I hope that this is the right question. What would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to someone who is looking to enter the sport media industry?
And I'm going to jump on quickly and add in scouting as well.
Yeah.
So I think I'll go with the scouting question first, because it's actually a pretty cool story. So I asked the same question. I was at the World Junior Showcase. I was at a roller hockey tournament, and the World Junior Summer Showcase was on, so I ended up going to that. And I saw George McPhee, who at the time was the GM of the Vegas Golden Knights. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, like, I've always wanted to be a scout. What's something that I should do? And straight up, he just told me, he said, just watch hockey, analyze it, and just keep doing it over and over again, and just build your perspective on the game, and continue to just watch for different things. And that's what he told me, and that's what I've done ever since. Just watch the little things in hockey players and see what they do on the ice. I think that's one of the biggest things for prospects and scouting. But as for sport media, I think the most important advice that I'd give to someone is don't be scared. Don't be afraid to take any risks. For myself, at the beginning of first year, I wasn't really afraid to take risks, which is why I sort of like built this confidence that I've had in the program and like with my writing and whatnot. I think it's really important to just try out and do things out of your comfort zone, and maybe you'll find something you like. I think that's something we heard from all of our profs in first year, and that's something that I really, took to heart and, have built with my entire process.
All right. So I think that'll wrap our interview portion. I think we've hit everything we've wanted to hit and given a real idea of who Raine is and everything that he's accomplished, which is a lot. But let's move into sports now. Let's get some of his opinions, hot takes, because your first overall pick was a hot take, who you thought it should be. But we're going to get NBA out of the way as quickly as possible, because there's a little bit we need to talk about with them. Specifically, Doc Rivers was hired as the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. What do you two think of that move? Is this good for the Sixers, bad for the Sixers, good for Doc, bad for Doc? What do you think of the move?
I think it's an exciting time to be a fan of the Philadelphia 76ers now. Doc Rivers was, a pretty good coach on the Clippers, and I still don't really agree with the Clippers firing him. But, he goes to a team with Embiid now and Simmons, a good young core there. And, he has a ton of experience in the league coaching. So I think he's just going to help this team a lot. And, I think a lot of people were saying it right away as soon as he got fired by the Clippers. Hey, watch out for the 76ers. They're going to be right there. They're going to be recruiting him right away. So I think it's a perfect fit, to be honest. I think it's a great signing by them.
Raine?
I think I'll go on the other side of the argument, just to make the conversation a lot cooler. Personally, I think Doc Rivers is one of the most overrated coaches in the NBA, just because of I think he's a great coach. We saw it last year with the Clippers team that he brought to the first round and actually competed with Golden State, considering the lack of talent they had. But I think a lot of people are, using that 2008 championship a little too much and carrying a little too much, because that big stat line of, leading three separate teams to blow a 3-1 lead is never a good thing to see. That's a little tough. And then also I thought a good fit for the 76ers would have been Mike D'Antoni. If they had, switched up the team and, actually put shooters around them, they would have had a lot better, because Ben Simmons, obviously we know what he does best, and it's pass the ball and, creating for others. And in a D'Antoni offense surrounded with shooters with Ben Simmons as your main guy, that would have been sweet. And, I talked to Nigel about it. He's a big 76ers fan, and he was like, yeah, I want Mike D'Antoni. I think that system would have been sweet. But yeah, I still think Philly's going to be a really good team. I just don't like Doc Rivers personally because, LeBron, right? So.
All right. If you're a LeBron fan, you're loving what's happening with the Heat with the Heat Lakers series right now. How do you think this is going to end? Is it going to go 5, or do you think the Heat push it to 6 or even 7?
The way the playoffs have been going, Lakers in 5, Lakers in 5, Lakers in 5, and then now in the NBA Finals, I think it's going to be Lakers in 5. I think Game 4 was the true who's going to win this series, and we saw last night that it was so close and so intense, and whoever would come out of that game would win that series because whoever would have won that game just has the momentum now. I think Miami was so close, and to lose such a close one and such a heartbreaker, you just lose your confidence after that. And that, like we saw it in Game 4 of the Laker Denver Nuggets series. Game 4 was really close and really tight, and once the Lakers pulled away in Game 5, they just didn't have that same energy.
I don't know. It's tough. It's tough.
It is tough.
I definitely agree that the Lakers have so much momentum now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Heat aren't going to go down without a fight. So I think they're going to win the next one.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? I'm gonna say Heat will push it to 7. I'm gonna say Heat push it to 7.
Okay.
But the Lakers don't blow the 3-1 lead and they win the championship. So I think LeBron is past the choking stage in his career. He just wants to seal the deal now. But I think like just the fact that they've been in the bubble for so long, like I don't see the series ending in 5 games. Like the Heat are really going to want to keep their season alive. So I think they'll win the next one for sure. And then maybe they'll get lucky in Game 6 again. But then LeBron is just too good. He'll just dominate in Game 7, I think.
I think it's going to go Lakers in 6 because I think Goran Dragic is going to try to play in Game 5. That's going to be a huge boost because he will play. I think Bam's going to play as well. But Game 6, Dragic is just going to realize he can't do it. And that'll be really deadly in terms of the momentum that they built in that win. So I'm going to say Lakers in 6, which probably isn't exactly a bold take, but it'll be interesting to see how that entire situation unfolds and how the series finishes because these are 2 very, very, very good teams, and you can never count out Jimmy Butler because he is absolutely insane. But we'll see. I think game's tomorrow night, correct?
Friday.
Friday night.
Oh, Friday. Wow.
All right. So Friday night, we will see whether or not it goes 6, whether or not we have an NBA champion. And let's get into hockey because
For sure.
there really isn't any other big sports news unless I missed something. Was there any sort of baseball news, Aiden? Any football?
I mean, there's playoffs. Like the Jays got eliminated.
There's one.
Which
they're up 2-0. That sucks. We all want the Astros.
The Astros, yeah, I know they got to lose. Dodgers won last night against the Padres. My hot take is the Padres will win the World Series, so I need the Padres to win against the Dodgers and upset them. Sorry, Kobe, but I think the Dodgers might lose this. Yeah, there's not really too much other news. Cam Newton has COVID in the NFL.
Stephon Gilmore has COVID.
Stephon Gilmore, that broke today.
That was a little tough.
Yeah, some teams are already looking ahead to the NFL draft. The Jets, Lions, potentially.
Texans, but they don't have a first-round pick. So
I was going to say, Houston Texans fired their head coach.
Yeah, Texans fired their head coach / GM.
I have a question for you. You think Matt Patricia gets fired before the end of the year?
I'm releasing a podcast tomorrow. I have another one, and it's just all about that. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, the Lions would be stupid not to fire him before the trade deadline because he's not going to be back next year. And also, the thing with the Lions is that their GM and Patricia are so close. They used to work with the Patriots together. Yeah. So, in my opinion, I think that Bob Quinn, the GM, is afraid to fire Matt Patricia just because they're so close. But the thing is, if you keep them, like, they're not going to be trading away guys like Marvin Jones at the trade deadline, guys like maybe potentially Matthew Stafford at the deadline, or guys that they have expiring because they know that they have to win this year to keep their jobs. Yeah. But if you're looking ahead to the future, now is the time to move on from a guy like Marvin Jones. And Patricia's just done such a bad job. He is 10-25-1. I got to say this. The Lions were 9-7 in Jim Caldwell's last year as a Lion. And Bob Quinn came out and said that 9-7 wasn't good enough. So he goes out and he makes a change. He gets Matt Patricia. Patricia has won 10 games in 4 years.
It's been tough.
Yeah.
Note to young people watching this podcast, don't support teams that wear blue and white.
Yeah.
Don't do it. Unless it's a Tampa Bay Lightning. Don't
Yeah,
do
that's
it.
just a Tampa Bay Lightning.
Even the Colts, man. Like, we have a good team, and then Andrew Luck retires, and my whole world crumbles. Like, oh my goodness! Like, I don't think I've ever been so sad in my life when he retired. And like,
Yeah, that I can't even imagine. That's really tough. Yeah.
just hurts you, man.
You know who was also sad when someone retired? Somehow the Philadelphia Flyers, because Matt Niskanen announced his retirement. He's, I believe, only 31. He has 1 year left on a $5.4 million AAV. The rumors are that they're not going to have him file the papers, that they're just going to put him as suspended in the same way that Dustin Byfuglien was suspended, so that if he wants to return at some point, he can. But what do you guys think of that retirement? That came really out of nowhere.
Yeah, you're right. It did come out of nowhere. I didn't expect it. I don't know. Did he even give like a reason as to why? Like,
He just said he was done.
yeah, like, I mean, he's got his cup. He won the cup in Washington. He had a good tenure in Pittsburgh. He played well last year too. I think he put up over 30 points in Philadelphia, playing big minutes, penalty kill minutes. It sucks for the Flyers because now they have to go out and find a replacement. I know they just signed or they re-signed Justin Braun yesterday just to solidify that back end a little bit. But I think they got some question marks, like Robert Haig might now sneak into your top four. Philip Myers, like, they're not the best defensemen. So I don't know. They're going to have to find someone.
Yeah, apparently the decision to retire was a lot of uncertainty around COVID and uncertainty with the NHL.
Oh,
Huh.
that is weird. Yeah, I think with the Niskanen thing though, like on the other side of that argument, it does free up $6 million in cap space for them, and now the Flyers have opportunities to, go out and get a big fish, or even re-sign one of their younger guys or one of their guys that are on expiring contracts. But the weird thing is, like, I think it would have affected me a little bit in my decision if I was going to retire or not. If I was in Matt Niskanen's shoes, he's at 948, I think, games played, something like that, like 950. Like, you're 50 games away. You're pretty much half a season away from getting to 1,000 games, which is such an accomplishment in the NHL. I would have done that first and then retired.
Yeah.
That's just like
I didn't even think
a
about
big
that.
accomplishment. Like, to be so close away from that sucks.
My theory, he's retiring for a season because of COVID,
Mhm.
and he'll return once things are back to normal.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, he's only like 33 too. He still has a good, few
Yeah.
years left in him.
And he's, I think, probably still going to collect that money. So
Sure, chase that bag.
I think that's potentially what he's going to do. And honestly, I don't blame him. I know he has kids, so he just gets to spend a lot of time with his kids, who right now is definitely going to be a tough time for them because they're either away from like their friends, and he's able to be around his family a lot. And if he likes it, great. If he wants to go back to playing, great. But I think this was a really interesting move. And as Aiden mentioned, moved into the Justin Braun signing, and that was a big reason why they did that. So we'll see whether or not they make any more additions or if they're good with what they have now. But yeah, that was just the beginning of all the crazy roster moves, which we can't spend a ton of time on every single thing because this would be a 7-hour show. Rodriguez, Brian, I think it's Brian. Yes. Brian Rodriguez on the Leafs.
Evan Rodriguez.
Evan. What? Who is Brian Rodriguez?
I don't know.
I recognize the name.
Maybe
sure.
Alex Rodriguez. He's actually pretty good at color commentary. Now that we brought up
Yeah.
Rodriguez.
He works for like 2 networks, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's weird. It's like ESPN and also I forget who, but he's actually pretty good, like, in the booth. So I'll give that to him.
Yeah. Well, Evan Rodriguez isn't going to get qualified by the Leafs.
Yeah.
Carson Soucy signed a 3-year, $2.75 million deal per with Minnesota. The Jets signed Laurent Brossoit to 1 year.
Who is that? Carson Soucy. I've never heard that name.
Is it defenseman?
Oh, wow.
I wanna
Never heard of
say
him.
like 26.
Okay.
Yeah, around
I
there.
guess.
Okay.
I think he's fairly decent. He's a good. I think he's top 4. Based on the money, he should be top 4.
Yeah.
That's weird. Never heard of his name. Okay.
All right. Well,
We gotta look it up.
Laurent Brossoit signed a 1-year, $1.5 million deal. Brian Elliott signed a 1-year, $1.5 million extension with the Flyers, which, I don't really get that in such a huge goalie market, but
Yeah.
I guess if they like him behind Carter Hart, go for it. What else happened? Jack Johnson got bought out
Finally.
by Pittsburgh. Oh, Jack Johnson. I feel so bad for Jack Johnson.
I know, me too.
Like,
Me too.
it's
Man too. Like, you hate to see it. His parents stole all his money. Like, that sucks. That sucks. Just to be in that position, but he's in the NHL, right? So, or he was in the NHL. So
he's still getting that money, so that's a good thing. We'll see whether or not he gets another deal. Probably unlikely.
yeah,
If we're going off of
I think there's a team that will sign him.
as well. Yeah.
which team,
I think.
who has a bad GM now? Oh, he's going to Edmonton, isn't he?
I mean, I think it's just a team that needs some defensive help,
Seattle.
and like
Seattle's AHL team.
Seattle's AHL team. He'll be the captain there.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
And don't say a team that needs defensive help because we need defensive help.
It's not good. Okay, Kyle Dubas, please no. But you could get Jack Johnson for the cheapest deal now. Like you could get him like league min, I would say. So it might be worth it. You never know.
League min, have you
looked at his numbers?
the press box?
Yeah, I know he's bad, guys. I know he's bad. I'm just trying to say something here.
You're trying to help out Jack Johnson's career. I see.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever team signs Jack Johnson is probably going to regret it, if we're being completely honest.
Oh, for sure.
Which is not the case with probably Michael Grabner, who got bought out by Arizona for some reason. He'll be a great bottom six addition to whoever wants to sign him. Hopefully, maybe the Leafs. I've heard their name a little bit, but we'll see whether or not that happens. Who else got bought out? Oh, Henrik Lundqvist got bought out. And the rumors are he's going to be a Washington Capital.
That would be cool. That would be pretty cool.
He will back up Ilya Samsonov, I assume. I believe it's Samsonov, yes?
Samsonov?
Samsonov. Samsonov?
I don't know.
Ilya.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say Ilya because there's Ilya Sorokin or however you say his name.
Shesterkin.
Sorokin, yes.
Shesterkin. Who's the Islanders guy?
Sorokin.
There we go. That's what I was thinking of. I think he's Ilya too, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Ilya as well.
We got a lot of Ilya goalies.
Yeah, and they're good. They're all really good too.
If you want a goalie, draft an Ilya.
Except for Brizgalov.
Yes.
Hey, he had his years. 2
years of Brizgalov in Phoenix. Phoenix at the time, star. So I'll give him that. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But he's whack.
And he's the perfect interview.
He's an interesting human being. We'll put it that way. What else happened? Ole Mata got traded by Chicago to the LA Kings for Brad Morrison, who was an ECHL player. Why?
Salary
question.
Salary cap dump. So Mata's contract, I think, is like
$4 million.
$4 million, something like that. So
it's
Chicago 3.8, something like that.
I think it's 3 years left at 4 per.
Yeah. So they retained, I think, $700,000. So it cleared up like almost over $3 million for Chicago. So I'll take it. We got to sign Kubalik. So hey, all the money we can get, right?
Yeah.
How much do you think Kubalik will sign for?
Considering Chicago's cap, and Chicago's cap is always brutal. It happens when you win 3 cups and have to overpay for people just for saying thank you. I probably think a bridge deal at maybe $5 million, like a 2-year deal at 5.5, something around there, and then 2 years from now, you give him the big deal if you have money then. But it could be around there.
That's an expensive contract.
Yeah.
For a guy who's only had 1 good season in the NHL.
That's why it's so weird, because I know for a fact you won't be asking for like a 4.5. I think it'd be a $5 million deal, $5 million deal, considering Saw's getting paid the $6 million, right? I really like him though. He's one of my favorite players. But yeah, I think Kubalik is around the $4 or $5 million range, around there. Like it'd have to be a bridge deal though, because Chicago's contract situation is always brutal. So it is what it is, right?
We asked Therese this when she came on, but we only have a few minutes left in the call, so I'll give you 3 minutes to answer it. Do you blow up the Chicago Blackhawks? And by blow up, I mean trade Duncan Keith, Patrick Kane, and Jonathan Toews.
I'm gonna say, I think you trade one of them, but I think you gotta let them ride it out, man. Just because it was a dynasty and you had the 3 cups, and Chicago's pretty mediocre right now. Like, they're not good enough to win, but they're not bad enough to tank. So
if they traded those guys, though, they'd be good enough to tank, or bad enough to tank. Good enough, bad enough?
Good enough to tank. I think it'd be good enough to tank.
Good enough to tank?
I think just out of respect, you have to keep Toews and Kane. They're lifetime Blackhawks. I think Keith as well. I think you could put him in that category.
Do you trade them to try to give them another shot at a cup?
Yeah. Maybe if they ask.
If they want it, yeah.
I think you should let them ride out their contracts and then go on from there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And do you re-sign Corey Crawford then?
Ooh, the Corey Crawford one's interesting. So they offered him, I think, 1 year, I think $3.5 million, around there. I think you do. I think you do give him a contract. I say 1 or 2 year deal, and then they just drafted Camiso, who's a goaltender from the National Development Program. So you'd have to wait for him to develop. But I think you do let Corey Crawford, sort of ride it out. But he's sort of at the back end of his career now just because of the injuries. So I think you give him a 1-2 year deal and let him ride it out as well. But I think the one person that you do have to get rid of, just for the sake of, the franchise, you got to buy out Brent Seabrook. You just got to. He was also, a massive part in the 3 cups, but at this point, he's the one player that's expendable just because of how brutal that contract is.
Yeah, that's going to be a brutal buyout, or B, cost you a whole lot in a trade.
Yeah. You're probably give up a first round pick just to get rid of his contract. Literally. Yeah. That's how bad the contract is.
It took Toronto a first round pick to get rid of 1 year of Patrick Marleau.
Yeah. Exactly.
Never mind however many years are left on Brent Seabrook's contract.
Yeah, I think you'd have to give 3 first round picks. Well, in terms of Chicago's case, it was really bad when they traded Bickle's contract, because the Bickle contract was pretty bad. And they had to give up Teuvo Teravainen. Yeah. And, Teravainen's now a beast on Carolina. And, it was all because of the Brian Bickle contract. So it happens.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Chicago does this offseason, where they try to keep the band together, they blow it up. But, yeah, it'll be something we have to watch, and it'll be a move that they're potentially regretting, which we're going to get into in a second after this little quick break. All right, and we are back to discuss everything else that's happened in the NHL, which is everything. Where do I even begin? I guess we could start with Carl Elsner got bought out, finally. I feel like this should have happened 3 seasons ago, before the contract was even signed.
Yeah.
But, that was not a very good situation. Didn't really turn out how Montreal wanted it, and it's going to be very expensive for them. Abdelkader was bought out by the Red Wings, and as I have in the note, the Red Gins. Who else got bought out? Let's see. Kyle Turris got bought out this morning. So he mercifully is released by Nashville after that situation just didn't work out at all, which is unfortunate to see. And yeah, it just sucks to see. Nick Bodino got traded, and all of his $4 million, because he made $4 million after having one good playoff run. Remind you of anyone, Serge Ibaka? Or not Serge Ibaka, Bismack Biyombo. He was traded along with the 37th pick and 70th for Luke Kunin and the 101st. You guys have any sort of thoughts on anything I've said up until now?
Bonino. That's all I gotta say.
I think with the Advocator one, it was just sort of a weird situation in Detroit. He got overpaid for being in a role that, you shouldn't get $4 million for, or whatever he was getting paid. But I do think he'd be a great fit for any bottom 6 role, just like an agitator, and also someone that's sort of the Islanders were really effective with their Matt Martin, Cizikas, Cal Clutterbuck line. Like, I think if Abdelkader was in that type of role instead of playing a top 6 role, which is obviously not his skill set, I think he'll be a good fit.
Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
good veteran, good on the forecheck. I think if Babcock was still the coach of the Leafs, he would be a must
Yeah.
sign. Like he would definitely be on the Leafs next year.
Yeah.
His advanced numbers though are trash.
Yeah, awful. Just awful.
Like he's not even an NHL player.
Yeah.
Like it's not even a conversation. It's so
Yeah.
bad. But
So bad.
we'll see if that has any sort of impact if he signs with anyone. Because for all we know, he could retire too. And honestly, who would blame him? What else happened? Oh, a guy who also shouldn't have been acquired by a team that shouldn't have acquired him. San Jose is going with a Martin Jones, Devin Dubnyk tandem.
I guess they want to go full tank. Like, I don't know. Like, it was when I saw that trade, I'm like, excuse me?
It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he got them at, like, they got him for pennies, but, and at 50 retained, but he's terrible. Like, he's not good anymore. And you're pairing him with Martin Jones, who is he even an NHL goalie at this point?
I think they're just betting on because I think Dubnyk only had like one bad year, right, last year. But before that, he was like, you know,
I
a
think he's
pretty
had a couple
decent
bad years.
two bad years in a row. I'm pretty sure they're just betting on him to go back to how he was in like 2018, 2017, where he put up like 918, 920 save percentage. So that's the only reasoning I could potentially see as to why San Jose would want him. Yeah.
They're going to need a minor miracle if they want him to carry them back to the playoffs, because Erik Karlsson can't turn right, and he's getting paid, I think, $11 million, $10 million, something in that range. Brent Burns is 35. Mark-Edouard Vlasic is 34 and isn't good anymore, and you're paying him about $9 million, $7 to $9 million. Yeah.
Yikes.
And that's for like another 6 years sort of thing. So
Sorry, Jose, you guys are done.
yeah. And they just acquired, it's okay though, they just acquired Ryan Donato too. So he'll add something to the Sharks forward group. They acquired him for a 3rd round pick in 2021.
I don't mind that trade. I think San Jose won that trade. A
Really?
3rd round pick
Okay.
for Donato, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good. Donato has a lot of upside. It didn't work out in Minnesota, but hey, you'll have a better opportunity, I guess, in San Jose, so you never know. I like him.
All right. Well, I'm skeptical because I think that's going to be a very early 3rd round pick, but maybe I am completely wrong and eat my words. It's not like I've done it before on this podcast. What else happened? Brandon Dillon signed a 3.9 times 4-year deal with Washington, not Winnipeg, Washington. The other guy, what's his name? Dylan DeMello, who signed a 4-year, $3 million AAV with Winnipeg. So there go 2 of Toronto's options on defense, which right now we're getting to the range where all we're going to get is Radko Gudas, which, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think of those 2 extensions?
I don't know. I think it's good for both Winnipeg and Washington. You know, they brought in Dillon this past year, right? Yeah, from San Jose. And
Yes,
I don't know. I think he's a good player. And then with DeMello, right-handed guy, has some offensive upside to his game. Winnipeg is in desperate need of defensemen. So I don't mind the contracts and the length too. So I think 2 pretty good signings. And yeah, like Connor said, 2 guys off the market that the Leafs could have got.
Raine?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Dylan DeMello. He's a Mississauga Majors alum, Steelheads alum. He's a great defenseman. Winnipeg, yeah, definitely needed defensemen, man. Like they were absolutely. It was pretty much just Josh Morrissey and whoever else was there.
His
Neil
band of merry
Pionk.
men.
Yeah, it was interesting for them. Somehow they found a way to pull things through from time to time, but yeah, the DeMello contract was needed. So
Yeah, I think both signings are good and they're going to benefit their teams in the long run, especially the Danilo signing. I like that a lot for Winnipeg. I think he's got really good advanced numbers. So hopefully he adds to that top four because apart from Morrissey and maybe borderline Pionk, it is lacking. But we'll wrap up just non-draft stuff with the 2 bits of Leafs news, starting with Dennis Malgin signed a 1-year league min contract with the Leafs. I think this is a great little bit of business for the Leafs. He's still relatively young. They get him for pennies on the dollar. I saw a projected contract, like his projected contract, according to Evolving Wilds contract projections, were over $1 million for a 1 and 2 year deals. So to get him for under $1 million, like, I think that's amazing. And they did the exact same thing with Jason Spezza. So what do you guys think of this addition? Do you think that bringing Spezza back to the Leafs and Malkin back to the Leafs was a good move? Do you think that they should have let Malgin or Spezza walk? Where do you sort of stand on these extensions?
I think, Spezza one was obviously more important, bringing him back, the veteran guy. He was probably the player who was most upset about, losing that series to Columbus and not even making the playoffs. And to get him at league min, he didn't even want a bit of an upgrade. He didn't want a raise. He stayed with the $700K, which just shows that he's loyal to what Toronto's doing. And I think at this point in his career, he just wants a shot at the cup. And hopefully the Leafs can give it to him. Dennis Malgin, I think we just have way too many of these small forwards who are just like strictly skill based, and we didn't really need him. I don't want him to be in the starting lineup. I think he's an AHL forward, maybe a healthy scratch guy for most of the season. But if you can get him at league min, I guess it's like low risk, high reward kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I think one of the big things with Malgin is he did have a very good season with Florida 1 year, and they're hoping and banking on him being able to get back to that. They're also banking on his ability to play up and down the lineup because he can play pretty much anywhere. So that's going to be big for Toronto. And with how cheap he is, that'll be great for their cap. But it'll be interesting to see what other moves they make and what other forwards they bring in because they've been linked with Wayne Simmons. And he's expressed interest in also coming to Toronto. But it would likely have to be under $1 million. And I don't know if Wayne Simmons is willing to do that, but it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. Where do you guys think Wayne Simmons ends up before we jump into the draft content?
I'm going to say Toronto. I think he's going to take a pay cut. And I do think that he would sign for under $1 million because I think he really wants to come to Toronto and be a big locker room presence to this team. I think he knows what he kind of is at this point in his career. He's not going to be that top 6 guy. He's a guy who can play power play 2, fourth line, but just to be a leader in the locker room. I think that's kind of what he is settled on now in his career. And he just wants to go to a team that has a shot at winning the cup. So I think he's going to sign with Toronto.
All right, Raine, what do you think?
I think the Toronto situation is really intriguing to him. I think Toronto is a pretty good fit for him, but if he's still looking to, get a payday and sort of get some money on his contract, I think Toronto's not the option for him. Obviously, he'd probably want to win a cup, so he'd probably go to a contender, maybe with a little more cap space, but I don't know who really wants to pay, a lot of money for a guy like Wayne Simmons at this point of his career because the drop-off has been a little noticeable. So I don't know if there's, a team that wants to give him that $3 million deal or that $2 million deal. So, yeah, honestly, I sort of would like to see him in Toronto.
I think I would too. He'd add a bit of grit and hopefully he can get back to that form that he's had in the past. But yeah, final trade that we're going to talk about because Elliot Friedman just tweeted Max Domi and a 3rd round pick. I believe it was this year in exchange for Josh Anderson. What do you guys think about this deal for Montreal? And then what do you think about this deal for Columbus? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Where do you sort of stand on?
I think Columbus won this trade, and I think Montreal could have got a lot more for Domi. Like, Anderson's coming off an injury. He's borderline top six. He was borderline top six on Columbus. He's probably going to play like a third line role with Montreal. Domi, like I think Montreal was like, okay, we got to get a bit bigger. But Domi can play that. He can play big. Domi can play big. He can get under your skin. He's a gritty guy. And then the fact that you also had to throw in a third round pick to make the trade happen is kind of silly to me. Maybe there was another team that was interested in Josh Anderson. And Bergevin kind of just threw in that third round pick just to put like the cherry on top of the deal. But I still think that's a lot to give up. Like, Max Domi, in my opinion, is a better player than Anderson. And then you also gave away a third. It didn't make sense to me.
I kind of disagree with that. I think it's a bit of a win-win because I think he's going to play in their top six. From the sounds of it, he's going to slot in second line right winger. But the reason I disagree with it is because Domi didn't really have his spot on Montreal. He is, I believe, a left winger or a center. And when you look at their center depth, they have Nick Suzuki, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Philip Deneau. That's your top 9 right there. Those are your centers. And Domi isn't going to replace any of them. And then you look at their left wingers, and they have Drouin and Tatar. So are you going to pay him $5+ million to be like a third line left winger? Is ultimately the question. And they took something that was going to be expensive and was going to be a tough negotiation, although both of them likely will be because it's Darren Ferris, and Leafs fans know Darren Ferris very well. But I think this is a rare win-win. I think he's going to slot into their tops. Anderson's going to slot into their top 6. He's going to be a big impact player for them. And I think Domi's going to slot in second line center on the Blue Jackets, and he's going to be big for their future as well. And the rumors are, according to Friedman, it sounds like they're making progress on a contract extension, Domi and Columbus. So we'll see whether or not that gets done in the next few days because they're both RFAs and they're going to have to sign new deals. Raine, what do you think about this trade? Do you think it's good for both sides? From my perspective, do you think it's better for Columbus? Do you think it's better for Montreal? Where do you sort of stand?
So I sort of do like the deal for both sides, actually. I think Josh Anderson does slide into Montreal's top 6. I think his floor is a 20-goal guy. We saw it 2 years ago. Obviously last year he dealt with injuries and only played in like 26 games, I think. But, before that, he was hitting 20 goals, no problem. And it sort of gives Montreal a different aspect because they never really have that big winger on their side. And, some secondary scoring behind Brendan Gallagher is something that they've been looking for a long time. I think Josh Anderson fits that. And personally for Columbus, I think it's a really good win because they ended up getting that third-round pick. Although I do like Josh Anderson on the Habs, that third-round pick was a little too much, especially in a draft class like this year, which is so deep and, filled with so many, intriguing prospects. But I think Max Domi is a really good fit in Columbus just because I think he's a center in the NHL. I still think he's a center, but not in Montreal, considering after, Nick Suzuki's playoff performance and Jesperi Kotkaniemi's emergence in the bubble. So they didn't really have that space for him in the center position, which is something that Domi wants. And Columbus will provide him that opportunity, and I think it's a good deal for both sides.
And they've officially made the pick now that was involved in the trade. And they picked Samuel Knazko.
Yes.
Defenseman, 6'1".
From Slovakia. He's a pretty good defenseman. I liked him. I watched some film on him, got to know him a little bit. I do like him as a prospect. That's why I thought the trade would have been perfect if it was a 1-for-1, but that third-round pick is just a little too much. But I do love the fit for Josh Anderson in Montreal for sure.
All right. Do you want to get into the draft?
I'd love to.
Did you watch the actual draft last night, or did you watch the KMN show's live stream?
Sadly, I did not. I was running the McKean's Twitter, so I didn't
Ah,
have a chance to get to KMN's stream, but I did watch it on my TV while I was doing that. So I did ask Kush and Nigel how the show went. So, worked out.
breaking news from Elliot Friedman. Hearing Las Vegas signs Chandler Stevenson to a 4-year extension worth $11 million. Does
What was that?
Vegas have like $20 more million in cap space than everyone else?
I think Vegas has the same salary cap rules as the LA Rams. Because the Rams just don't listen to the salary cap. They just sign everyone to big extensions, just like Vegas does.
Like, they're over the cap at this point already, and apparently they're the favorites to sign Petrangelo.
That's crazy.
So
That Vegas money, man, I'm telling you, it's that Vegas money.
who's getting dealt
It's money.
apart from Fleury?
Yeah. I was just gonna say, yeah, Fleury.
That's only $7 million though.
I don't know.
And you're probably signing Petrangelo to 8.5 to 9 would be my guess.
I honestly don't know where Petrangelo is going. I honestly don't know.
Like, there's always the chance he stays with St. Louis as well.
I hope he stays.
It
But
just
St.
sounds
Louis
like
poorly
they're
managed that whole situation, trading for Falk.
I think
I
think Paul Stastny is a guy on Vegas that could be traded. He's making 6.5 a year. He's a UFA come 2021. This guy's 34 years old. I think maybe they expect Chandler Stevenson to move up into the top 6 next year, take
Even
his spot.
Cody Glass as well. Like
Cody
Vegas,
Glass, exactly. He's coming up.
They need to shed some salary for sure.
So they got to buy out Fleury because apparently no one's going to take him in a trade. They're going to have to try and trade Paul Stastny, which will likely require a sweetener. They're in a very difficult cap situation if they want to bring in Petro, but I guess if you can bring in Alex Petrangelo, you do it. But we have talked. We can just not get to the draft at this point. So let's do that. Let's go through. We're going to go through the first 15 picks. Raine, I want you to give us your opinion on if it was a good pick and whether or not they should have been taken earlier or later. And we'll also talk about all of the Toronto picks, first of all, as well as all of the Chicago picks, because you're a Chicago guy. And we're going to talk about whatever the Devils and Columbus did, because, wow. But let's start off. First overall, consensus number 1, even though you disagree, Alexis Lafreniere. Was this the right pick for the New York Rangers?
Yeah, so I think Alexis Lafreniere is the most NHL-ready player in this draft class, and obviously he was going to be the first overall pick. I just think Quinn Byfield's just going to be the better overall player when it's 5 years from now, just because of the production and the comparison. So, everyone looks at the World Juniors as the main thing, but Lafreniere is also a full year older. And, a lot of people forget what happened when Lafreniere was the youngest player on the team. 2 years ago, he was on the 4th line, didn't play much. They relied on the older guys. And that was pretty much what Byfield was this year at the World Juniors. He was the youngest guy on the team. He wasn't playing a lot. He was just there. So that's why a lot of people looked at the World Juniors. And also, I'm going to take the center over the winger, 10 times out of 10 when I'm starting to build a franchise. But overall, also with Byfield's skill set, the size, being 6'4", the speed, he's a terrific skater, and he's just an all-around great offensive player. That's why I think Byfield's better. But as for Lafreniere, I do think he's legit. Like if he was a few days older and he was in that draft class last year, he would have been the first overall pick. So I do think Lafreniere is legit. I think he slides in right away into New York's top 6 and puts up maybe 60 points and becomes a Calder Trophy winner. I think he's that good, but I do think Byfield will end up becoming the better player just because of his season.
Do you think Byfield makes the NHL next year?
I hope not. I hope LA is known not to rush their prospects, so I think he could make the team. Like, I think he's talented enough to make the NHL right away, but I think LA is going to be patient with him. Uh, I think they should just take their time. And if Byfield does return back to, say, Sudbury, they have a really good shot of winning the Memorial Cup. They've got a really deep roster with him. But if not, if he goes overseas, that'll help his development just as much, if not even more. So there's a lot of options for him, but I don't think the NHL next year is one that he should pursue.
Interesting. Okay. I think it was Rachel Dory. It might have been someone else, and she jumped on it as well. Theorized that maybe Byfield should go to Europe next year.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned it. I think, it worked really well with Matthews' development. Going overseas, you're still playing against men, against stronger competition, better competition, but it's not the NHL where, the speed's just a whirlwind for rookies, and we see that a lot. We saw with Jack Hughes this year and Capo Caco. It takes a while for some players to adjust. That's why I think it's good to take your time on certain players.
All right, let's move on to pick number 3, because I think we've sort of gotten your thoughts on Byfield combined with Lafreniere and Tim Stützle. How do you say it?
Stützle.
Tim
Yeah.
Stützle. What do you think of that pick for the Sens? Was that the right decision, or should they have gone with someone else?
Yeah, I like Tim Stützle. Personally, I thought Lucas Raymond, he was the number 3 player on my list. I think Lucas Raymond was just a little better, just because I think Stützle got the go-ahead just because of his production playing against in a legitimate professional league overseas, whereas, Raymond was also in that situation, but he didn't get the same opportunities he did. So I love Tim Stützle. I think he's going to be a great player. I do think the question is whether he can be a winger or a center. I think he does have the talent and the smarts to be a center in this league. So it's a good fit for Ottawa. They have, a lot of good prospects already in the system. They have Logan Brown. They have Josh Norris, who they got in the Erik Karlsson trade. So overall, it's a good pick for them. I think it, speeds up the rebuilding process just a little bit. And, say next year they don't do very well, they get another top 3 pick, and then there you go. Ottawa's future is set.
Yeah, and that's something they've also fast forwarded this morning by acquiring Matt Murray, which was a pretty big acquisition. They gave up a 2nd-round pick today. I think it was 52nd overall, and Gunnar as well. So I guess quickly, how big do you think that is for their rebuild, and do you like the trade for Ottawa?
Yeah, so Ottawa, I think it helps a little bit, and it also just helps with, Ottawa does have a lot of prospects in their pool, so that's why trading a guy like John Gruden was okay. And they do get someone that could be their goalie for the long run. They're taking a risk on Matt Murray, but Ottawa's also in a position where they can take a risk because they're not trying to win now. They're not gambling on a goalie that could make or break their season. Ottawa sort of wants their season to break. So if Matt Murray doesn't work out, then it's okay for them because, they have options and they can just rebuild again. So, and then if it does work, then it's kudos to them. They just won that trade. So overall, it's a win-win situation for them.
Yeah, and then they had to pick one pick after this, but we'll first touch on who you thought was number 3 in Lucas Raymond. Do you like that pick for the Red Wings?
Yeah, I love Lucas Raymond to the Red Wings. I thought he's, the 3rd most talented player in this draft class, just what he brings to the table. A lot of people use the Mitch Marner comparison. I do see it a little bit, but I do think he's, a little bit more fluid of a skater and a little bit better of a passer, both coming out of the draft at least. And yeah, I think Lucas Raymond's legit. I think he's going to fit well. Detroit does have some pieces. They do have a lot of good players. So yeah, I like it. Yzerman did a great job there.
All right. What about the Sens' next pick in Jake Sanderson? Did you like that pick for them, or did he go too early?
So I do love Jake Sanderson. I was the biggest Jamie Drysdale fan, so those are the 2 top defensemen that a lot of people were looking at. For the longest time, I had Drysdale over Sanderson. But the more I watched Sanderson, I realized that I think he was a more complete defenseman. Not as good offensively, but just an overall better defenseman. Personally, I thought Ottawa jumped a little on Sanderson. I thought, at that point, they sort of still need a little bit, some center depth in their prospect pool. And Marco Rossi would have been the perfect fit for them. I thought, Ottawa, playing for the Ottawa 67s, you'd think that the Senators would just fall in love with that guy after what he did this year or the past 2 years with the 67s. So I thought that would have been a fit for him. But, Yeah, Sanderson's a great pick. It solidifies their defensive core for the future, and now they have 4 legitimate prospects that will show out. That now they have Sanderson, Jacob Bernard Docker. Then now legitimately on their NHL roster, they have Thomas Chabot, who's one of the best young defensemen in the NHL, but as well as Eric Brandstrom, who they got in the Mark Stone trade. So defensively, Ottawa looks really good, and with that Sanderson pick, that helps it out.
All right. What do you think of the Anaheim Ducks pick and Jamie Drysdale? Obviously, you're a big fan of him. Do you think he should have gone at this spot? Or do you think that they should have swung on someone like a Marco Rossi, a Cole Perfetti, who went a little bit later?
Yeah. We saw Anaheim take the biggest. I think they took the biggest L of the expansion draft when they shipped Shea Theodore, because Shea Theodore, I think now is going to be a perennial.
I think that goes to Florida. They gave up Riley Smith and
Florida,
Jonathan Marchessault.
Riley Smith and Marchessault. Yeah, I think it's a toss up.
Theodore.
I think it's a toss up between the two, but I think losing Shea Theodore, considering who they kept Vatanen and who else? Manson as well.
Manson,
And they ended up trading Vatanen like later that year, or like a year later. So they could have kept Theodore altogether. Even Minnesota, they did it with Tuck. Anyways, I'm drifting off. But Anaheim needed to solidify their defensive core in terms of their prospect pool, and Jamie Drysdale is one of the best defensive prospects I've seen, I think, in a while. I really like him, what he does offensively. Erie's not the best team since, the Strome, DeBrincat, McDavid days. They haven't been the same. So Drysdale was asked to do a lot, and that's why, a lot of people thought he wasn't responsible defensively. But I don't think that's the case. He was just put in a situation where he had to, do a lot more than he was asked. So I think overall he's a great prospect, and, Anaheim hit a home run with him.
All right. And what about Jersey's next pick, Alexander Holtz?
Yes, I am also a big fan of Alexander Holtz. This guy is awesome. He's the other, I guess, the Terror Twins is a big thing that was big in the NHL draft, which was the 2 Swedish wingers, and Lucas Raymond and Alexander Holtz. They're both for real. I love Alexander Holtz. He's a legitimate talent offensively, and I think he's going to be a perfect fit for either Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier on their wing. I think he can be ready in 2 to 3 years and provide, offense right away.
All right. Next up, I have to admit, when they made this pick, all I did was laugh. Jack Quinn to the Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, so that one was a little shocking. I understand why they picked up Jack Quinn, just because they wanted to, pick that winger beside Eichel, blah, blah, blah. But let's be honest here. Jack Eichel's probably gone in a year or two. Like, what does Buffalo have for them? So they drafted for positional need, which is something I don't think you should ever do when you're, drafting in the top 10. I think you draft the best player available. In the entire year, Marco Rossi and Jack Quinn played on the same line, and Marco Rossi was clearly the better player. Marco Rossi, I think, was the primary assist man for probably all of Jack Quinn's 50 goals. Like, legitimately. If you were to watch an Ottawa 67 game, you would never choose Jack Quinn over Marco Rossi. So I think that's what Buffalo screwed up on. I see why they did it, but, they got to be real with themselves. Jack Eichel's probably gone in a year or two, so that, that winger beside him doesn't matter.
And then Judd Brackett promptly followed it up by dancing to the podium to select Marco Rossi immediately after. I take it you like this pick, considering he was probably supposed to go top 5.
Yeah, he was number 5 on my list. I'm in love with the way Marco Rossi plays the sport. I think a big reason why he fell so much in the draft was because he's 5'9". I think if he had 2 inches to his height, he's a top 3 pick. That's how talented he was. He's obviously has the older birthday, but we saw in his, draft year last year, which was what he was supposed to, because he's 2001 birth, he was dominant. And then this year, it was even more dominant. He dropped, I think, 120 points this year, and he's just a complete package offensively. And he's, despite being 5'9", he does have that big, stocky frame, so it's a little tough to take the puck off him, and he's very creative. And, outside of Alexis Lafreniere, I think he's the second most NHL-ready prospect, and I think he does slide and step into the NHL, or he steps in overseas.
Wow, that's a big statement there. Clearly, Minnesota's going to be very happy with this player. Yeah. Huge for their future, especially when you look at their centers, and Mikko Koivu, they're letting go. They just got rid of Eric Stahl. That's going to be a big boost to them. Next up, we have Winnipeg just, again, dancing to the podium to select Cole Perfetti. What do you think about this move for Winnipeg?
Yeah, I think it's a steal. No one thought Cole Perfetti would be available at the 10th pick. I know the Jets weren't ready to have that, but it's a great fit for them. Again, you draft best player available, and you heard the trade talks, the rumors with Patrick Laine or Nikolai Ehlers. Oh, excuse me. So I think the Jets put themselves in a position where, they can trade a guy like Patrick Laine or Nikolai Ehlers because they have someone waiting in the balance in Cole Perfetti, who I think is a good winger. I think he's a winger rather than a center at the next level, and I think he's going to produce well. And he's such a great offensive talent, and the Jets have put themselves in a really good spot after that Perfetti pick.
Does he play in the NHL next year?
No, I don't think so. I think he comes back for another year in junior and dominates again. Saginow's got a really good team. I just don't think that. I think the only two guys that should be playing in the NHL next year are Lafreniere and Rossi. I think Stützle could play in the NHL as well. But other than that, I think everyone should return in junior or stay with their respective pro clubs because I don't think you should rush any prospect into the NHL. We saw it happen a bunch of times where you put an 18-year-old against grown men and they're not ready for anything, right? And then it ultimately just changes how they play. So, yeah.
All right. And I think that's where we're going to take a pause and we'll finish the next 7 because I also want to get your thoughts on the Montreal pick. So we'll do 17 on top of Shakir Makamadula. We're going to have fun saying that name later.
Yeah.
And Yegor Chinnikov because, wow. But we'll take a quick break and we'll be right back to finish out the top 17 and whoever those 2 picks were. All right. And we're back to finish off the top 17 and the 2 what are you doing and thinking picks of the first round. So we'll start off with pick number 11, which went to the Nashville Predators, which made me very sad. Yaroslav Askarov, goalie out of Russia. What do you think about this pick for Nashville?
I think Yaroslav Askarov is the best goaltending prospect since Carey Price. From all the film I've watched and how dominant he is, it was a great pickup for Nashville. I think we're seeing it right now. Pekka Rinne on the twilight of his career right now. So, by the time Pekka Rinne retires, I think Yaroslav Askarov slips in alongside UC Saros. And, Nashville is a really good goaltending situation. And, yeah, I think he's legit. It was a great pickup for Nashville. And I'm totally okay with taking a goaltender early because, it's the most important position in hockey. It really is. If you don't have a goaltender, your team's going to stink. And you saw it this year, prime year, Tampa Bay, their number 1 goalie, Andrei Vasilevsky, drafted early in the first round. I think he was 16 or 17. It's worth taking the risk on a goaltender because ultimately it's the most important position.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think he's going to be a really good goaltender in the future. And also just the fact that he has Rinne as a mentor now and Saros, they can kind of like ease him in to a starting goaltender situation at some point down the stretch. I think it's a perfect fit. And yeah, I was hoping that he would fall to the Leafs at 15, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it's the way life goes.
Yeah, we should have seen it coming, but it still hurts. Let's move on to Florida, who took Anton Lundell. What did you think about that pick?
Yeah, so I really like Anton Lundell. Personally, he was a top 10 prospect for me. So it's a real great fit for the Florida Panthers, who's obviously looking to, bolster their prospect pool because they do have some prospects in the system. And, ultimately now some of those prospects are going to jump up to the NHL. So they need some replenishment of that prospect pool. And, Florida's in a position where they can take the best player available. And Anton Lundell was there. And, he's having a real good start this year, playing pro overseas. And I think is a real talented player. And, Florida has had their success with, drafting Finnish centers. So hopefully this works out for Lundell and with the Panthers.
Yeah, and we're going slightly north to Carolina next with Seth Jarvis, right winger.
I absolutely in love with Seth Jarvis. I love the way he plays. He's such an electric offensive player. This year in Portland, he was absolutely dominant. Carolina, they're also in that same position where they can just draft whoever the hell they want because their roster is so deep. We saw it with, in the playoff run, although they didn't make it far, they had 8 top 4 defensemen, like legitimately. So their roster runs deep, so they can draft whoever they want. And drafting a guy like Seth Jarvis, who I think is a tremendous offensive talent, but he still has a lot of room to grow. He still has to get stronger, get bigger. I think still has to get a little bit quicker on his feet, even though he's a decently fast player. But just overall, the little things, and I think Carolina can do that because they don't have to rush him in the NHL since they have so many prospects in the system. They can ease him in, let him get comfortable playing pro first, and then once he's in the NHL, he'll be ready.
Yeah, he's only 5'10", 175, so hopefully you see him fill out a bit more and get a bit bigger. But it's a pick that I think a lot of people wanted the Leafs to be able to take, who we'll get to in one more pick. But first they had to get through the Edmonton Oilers, who took Dylan Holloway. What did you think about this pick?
Yeah, so I'm a really big fan of Dylan Holloway. Again, he's also one of those older birthdays, the 2001. So if he was, in last year's draft, I think he's a top 10 pick. That's how deep this draft is. He's a really talented player. Wisconsin had really, really high expectations. They had a really, big recruiting class coming in this year. They had Turcotte, they had Cole Caulfield, and they had Dylan Holloway coming in. So there was a lot of pressure, and Holloway managed to play well in his freshman season because, playing college hockey is a little tougher than playing junior hockey because you're an 18-year-old playing against 22-year-old men, 23-year-old men, 24-year-old men. So it's a little tough to dominate, as a true freshman. And Dylan Holloway showed some flashes. He was very good, very effective. And, I think he's going to be a good fit to be a McDavid line mate or even as a second-line center for them.
All right. And let's talk Leafs. Rodion Amirov. He's out of the KHL. He played in the MHL as well. He's 6 feet, 167 pounds. They have him on Sportsnet listed as a right winger. First of all, what do you think of the pick? Second of all, is he a right winger? And third of all, what do you project him to become?
So I've had this conversation with, I think, 5 different Leaf fans that were pissed at the drafted defenseman. So I'm just going to say, for the sake of this show, Rodion Amirov is a legit prospect. He is awesome. I think drafting a defenseman was not a great idea for the Leafs at this point because ultimately drafting a defenseman doesn't help them for what they truly need is a defenseman for now. Drafting a defenseman right now, you're probably going to be waiting 5 years to wait for him to develop. And, that's past the Leafs window. Let's be real here. They only have a small window to win the Stanley Cup because, who knows what could happen with their salary cap and whatnot.
No. You said it best there. You said it best.
Salary cap. Anyways, so honestly, they drafted the best player available at that point, and Rodion Amirov was that. I think he's just an absolutely amazing offensive talent. I do think he could be a winger in the future. I think he's one of those guys where you can plug him as a center or plug him in as a winger. Regardless, he is going to get you, production and be effective. So what I've seen from him, he's been real effective in the KHL. I think he's going to be a top 6 forward. He's 19 and he's putting up decent numbers in the KHL, which is something that's pretty unheard of nowadays. So he's doing great. I think he's going to be a terrific prospect for them. And also, this also puts him in another situation where, say, a year from now in the trade deadline, they want to go and grab a big fish. And, Rodion Amirov could be that guy where they ship him off for that big piece. So this gives the Leafs a lot of flexibility and comfort and also just another person to add in their prospect pool.
Yeah, it's a really interesting player. And I think he has 5 points through 10 games in the KHL as a 19-year-old or 18 or 19-year-old. What do you think he will become? Do you think he's a top 6 winger? Do you think he's more of a middle 6 guy? You mentioned that he might be able to play center, which would be pretty big. What do you think, if you had to guess today, he becomes in the NHL?
So are you saying projection as in like when he can step in to the NHL?
More so what he would become, but also when he would step in. That'd be great too.
Yeah, I think personally, I think he's a top 6 forward. I think he slides into the Leafs top six. Once he steps into the NHL, I think he's that big of a prospect that he'll just jump into the NHL right away. But I also think it's a matter of the Leafs should be patient with him. Obviously, they're not in a rush to acquire offensive talent and put them on the roster right away. So, you let him play in the KHL for a bit. We saw it be really successful for a lot of guys. A lot of people mentioned it last night. You saw the Kuznetsov, they waited for him. The Tarasenko, they waited for him. You got to be patient with some of the Russian players, and Vancouver's doing it with their last year prospect in Vasily Podkolzin. So they just got to be patient, and I do think he's going to be really successful at the next level.
All right, Aiden, do you have any sort of thoughts on the Leafs pick?
I like the pick. I agree with Raine that it wasn't necessary to take a defenseman because, that's what they need now and not in like 5 years. You take the best guy available. I think Amirov was probably the best forward available. I know he's good two-way. I know he's a pretty fast skater. Good hands. I saw him pull off the Michigan. Speaking of Michigan, I saw him pull up that off in the KHL, so that's impressive. You can't really ask for too much more. Like maybe they could have traded down with a team like, I don't know, Calgary, who did end up trading their pick. But I don't know. Maybe you trade down and still get Amirov and then acquire a pick later on. But I can't really complain. I think Kyle made the right choice with this one.
All right. Do you think that Montreal made the right pick with Caden Gooley?
See, that's one where I'm like, so this draft class is so deep with so much offensive talent. Personally, Montreal didn't need to draft a defensive prospect, but they're also in a position where they do have a deep prospect pool. They do have some prospects in the system, so I guess it's replenishing that. Saying Romanov is coming up this year, so yeah, I personally didn't like the pick. I do like Caden Gooley as a prospect. It's just there were so many forward prospects that they had options with, and the fact they didn't choose to pull the trigger on it's a little tough, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and they passed on guys like Dawson Mercer and a few other guys who fell pretty far. But we'll wrap up our in order picks with Chicago's pick, Lucas Reichel. Do you like this pick for Chicago, and do you think that this is where he should have gone?
Yeah, I love Lucas Reichel. I think he was a really underrated prospect. He was jumping on a lot of boards later in the year. I think he's a great playmaker. Again, with the situation in Germany and playing in the Dell, he was putting up really good numbers, for in a pro league as a 19-year-old. It's really impressive regardless to be doing stuff like that. And, Chicago, they have options as well. They're not looking to draft now. They look to draft the best player available. And Lucas Reichel did show some flashes as well in the World Juniors. I like the pick a lot. Chicago does really well with drafting European players, it seems, and, finding that European talent. So I do trust the scouting staff there. So I do like Lucas Reichel. He's a great playmaker. He's a great, it was really weird because with Lucas Reichel in the Dell, he wasn't trying to push up play much just because he's such a young kid and, he had his line mates help him out. But, he's a fantastic playmaker. He does have a really accurate shot, which was something I really liked. He doesn't have that, bomb of a shot where, he's going to wire it from the top of the circle straight top left. It's just, wherever he needs to shoot, he's a really accurate player like that. So, yeah, I really enjoy the pick. I think it's a good fit. And, possibly in the future, that's going to be a winger for Kirby Dach.
All right. And what do you think he's going to become? Same vein as we asked with Amirov.
Yeah, so I do think that maybe he's a fringe top six guy, middle six guy, that sort of thing. I do think he can put up 40, 50 points, maybe 50, 60. It's hard to deal with projections at this point. One thing I do want him to do, though, instead of staying in the Dell, I do want him to come to North America and, play junior hockey. And, I think if he plays junior hockey, I forget where he got drafted to in the import draft, but if he plays junior hockey, he's going to be a really dominant player. He's going to be really comfortable. He's going to have the opportunity to be the main guy there, which is something that's really important in someone's development. playing in the Dell in Germany, he won't have that same comfort and same luxury. Whereas if he goes to North America and plays on a junior team, he's going to be the main priority, get power play time, stuff like that. So I do think that would be really important for him.
All right, now let's talk the two shockers of the first round is probably the best way to describe it, both as everybody was shocked and they were shockingly bad. First of all, the Devils took Shakir Mukhamadullin. I think I said that correctly.
Yeah.
He
Sounds about
was
right.
ranked, I have it down written here. He was ranked, I don't have it for him, for the next guy, but he was pulled by like 50 spots. I think he was ranked in the 70s on some boards. Do you like this? Like, I'm going to assume you don't like this pick. Why did
like this pick though? That's the
you
thing.
like this pick? Why do you like this pick?
So, there's this Russian hockey scout that I like to talk to and get his opinions off of, and he was a really big fan of Shakir Mukhamadullin. Obviously, I wouldn't have picked him in the first round, but I see why New Jersey did it. Maybe they thought that someone was going to take him, even before them. They didn't have a pick for a while, I think, after that, not until the second round. So there was a chance that he was taken in the second round, but I do like him as a prospect. I think he'll be a great player for New Jersey. I think it's a little weird, though, because the thing that people forget about the NHL draft and, people going up and people going down is every NHL team has their own different draft board. And, they build it on their own based on who they see as, will fit that mold. So I think he's a great prospect, but it's a little weird to, draft him that early. I think he could have been available, but, personally, I like the New Jersey pick. And as for the Columbus pick, I'll let you go into that first.
Yeah, Yegor Chinnikov was taken immediately after this. That was a massive reach. Corey Pronman had him at number 125 on his board. The consensus pick for him was 132nd, and he went 21st. What do you think of this pick, and how bad is it?
Look, I guarantee that he would have been available wherever Columbus picked within the first 3 or 4 rounds. So there was no point of drafting him in the first round. So it shocked me. It shocked me a lot. Personally, I only knew him, I think from one game, I forget where, but we also had a profile of him on McKean, so right after I read it right away. But with Yegor Chinnikov, there's one thing that I will do, and I will always trust Jarmo Kekalainen. He is incredible at finding talent, so I'm not going to judge him on this one, even though he could have picked him up in the 3rd or 4th round and maybe got someone a little better value with their first round pick. But I will trust Jarmo Kekalainen, considering he likes to make those big jumps and try to get those players, and it always seems to work out. Like, it worked out in St. Louis. Vladimir Tarasenko, no one wanted to pick up on him because of the Russian factor of it. He didn't want to come to North America, but Jarmo took a chance on him and it worked out. The following year, he did it again with Jaden Schwartz. Jaden Schwartz wasn't supposed to be a first round pick. He was supposed to be, I think, a second round pick, and yet Jarmo took a risk on him. He's a, great hockey mind, so I'm going to trust him on this one. But if it doesn't work out, that's tough.
Yeah, I am not sure about that pick personally, but is what it is, I guess. Let's take a look at team specific now. We'll start with the first pick, team specific, being the Blackhawks. Drew Comesso, goalie. Yeah. Took him in the second round. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, so this was the draft pick for the Robin Leonard trade. So
okay.
Ultimately it works out. Obviously, it was such a weird situation because, no one would have thought in March when they made that, or in February when they made that trade, that they'd be playing in the playoffs against each other. That's the way 2020 has been. So I do like the pick a lot. Chicago's very thin goaltending wise in their prospect pool. They just released Alexei Gravel, which was one of their main prospect goaltenders. But I really like Drew Comesso. I forget how to pronounce it. He was my second or third goaltending prospect that I had. Joel Blomqvist is the other one. He's a really good goaltender. So it was honestly a toss-up between the two. But I knew it was going to be a big priority for the Blackhawks to acquire a goaltender just because it's so thin there. So, yeah, I really like the pick. I think he should Goaltenders, it's different with development. Same thing with defensemen as well. You got to take a little time with them. It's a little different to develop. Obviously, the one outlier is Carter Hart. He came in right away and has been a stud ever since. But with, I think, 95% of goaltenders, it takes a few years for them to get used to the NHL level.
Yeah, and Blomqvist went, I think, 7 picks later. He went to Pittsburgh. So pretty close, clearly on value. One thing I did forget to mention during our little discussion was Robin Lehner signed a 5-year, $5 million per extension with Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
Does this pain you, looking at it as a Blackhawks fan? And what do you think about the contract?
I think it's a great contract. Marc-Andre Fleury obviously had a down year. I don't know what the future holds for him, but it'll be interesting. But it does pain me a little bit, just because hey, we could have had him for that playoff run, man. Like, I'm gonna be honest, we could have had him, but who would have known that the Blackhawks would have made the playoffs, right? That's just crazy to me. So yeah, it pains me a little bit. I thought Robin Lehner was going to be a Blackhawk for a little bit longer than half a season, but it is what it is. They got a second-round pick out of it. They drafted a really good goaltending prospect, so we'll see what happens.
All right, and we're moving on to our next Leafs pick, being Raine Hernandez. I believe is how you pronounce it. He's a center, another small guy. He's 5'9", 164. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, I think he's a great defenseman. Hey, that's what Leaf fans wanted, right?
He's a centerman.
Defenseman. So
he's a centerman.
Oh, this is Hervon. Oh, I thought we were talking about Niemela. Sorry.
No, he's next.
Next. Okay, yeah. Aaron, great prospect. He is awesome. I really like him just because, once again, the Leafs are in a situation where they don't have to – they have a pretty deep prospect pool, so the best thing to do is just to draft the best player available. And in terms of this case, they hit a home run. They ended up getting the 2 draft picks for Tyler Clevin, who they traded to the Ottawa Senators for in that little switcheroo. So Hirvonen, great prospect, and then the one big prospect I'm really excited for the Leafs is Topi Niemela, which we'll get to in the next prospect we talk about.
Speaking of Topi Niemela was the next pick. He's a defenseman, 5'11", 150. Wow, he's skinny. 156. What do you think about this signing? Obviously, I sort of cut you off a little bit when you're initially going off, but what do you think about this signing?
Yeah, sorry about that. I got the 2 Finns mixed up. So Topi Niemela was a guy I followed a lot. So this guy is actually a pretty good defenseman. He's really responsible in his own end, considering how big he is. And he was really productive on the defensive end, considering he was playing against grown men, which is something that's very uncommon. Usually you get that young guy who's a really good offensive player and doesn't know how to play defense, where this time it's the other way around. He's a really responsible defenseman. And I think the thing that'll make him from good to great is if he can improve that offensive output, if he gets a little more confidence and honestly just, develops that, chemistry and confidence to provide more upside offensively, it'd make him a great defenseman.
Is he left or right-handed?
I think he's a right-handed defenseman. I'm pretty sure he's a right-handed defenseman. I remember the film I was watching. I think he was a right-handed defenseman. I'm going to make sure.
Well, it would be very beneficial if you were a right-handed defenseman.
He's right-handed.
Right-handed.
Yes. There you go. So potentially a future key part of the Leafs if he pans out.
Literally.
But we'll move on to the next pick, which is 79 for Chicago. Landon Sliger, left winger, 6 foot, 180. What do you think about this pick?
Yeah, so actually I watched him more in his minor midget year when he was playing for the Chicago Mission. He's a really good offensive player. That 02 National Development Program team, they're decent. He got a decent amount of playing time, put up decent numbers, but I think the main thing for him will be developing at Notre Dame. I think after a few years of, getting used to the system and getting used to college hockey and ultimately developing yourself as a player, I think he could be a real steal for the Blackhawks.
All right, and 2 picks later, they took Wyatt Kaiser.
Yeah, so Wyatt Kaiser, I didn't know too much about him, but I think he was playing high school hockey in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And he's committed to Minnesota Duluth, I think.
I'm not sure about that. He's a defenseman, 6 foot, 173.
Yeah, so honestly, the Blackhawks have done a pretty good job, drafting high school players that will end up, playing Division I hockey. So I liked Wyatt Kaiser, like from what I've talked to with other scouts and other people, that they did like him as a player. And ultimately, Chicago does a really well job in drafting players and filling up the prospect system. So I do trust him.
And this is just funny, not related to the Blackhawks or Leafs, but 2 picks later, the Kings couldn't get Lafreniere, so they took Alex Laferriere. So that's kind of hilarious. Nico Dawes went immediately after that. And he's someone who I think fell pretty far, correct?
Not necessarily. I think he was, in that range of a 4th round, 3rd round selection. I thought he was. So in terms of goalies, I think the biggest tier is Yaroslav Askarov, like best goaltending prospect since Price. Then a tier below it is your Camiso and Blomqvist, and then your 3rd tier is the Nico Dawes.
All right. Well, let's talk about another goalie, which is the next Leafs pick in Artur Akhtiamov.
Akhtiamov. I think so.
Something with a lot of letters together that don't make sense. He's 6'1", 167, goalkeeper from Russia, the junior league.
Yeah. So personally, I didn't watch a lot of MHL highlights or of Artur Akhtiamov, but the Leafs, they do actually have a good set of goaltending prospects in the system. Ian Scott's decent. I'm a big fan of Joseph Wall. I think he can be an NHL goalie within a few years. I've been a fan of him since his, Boston days, and, even in the World Juniors as well. I think he's a legit goaltending prospect. But, it's good for the Leafs to, refill that cupboard for them. Usually they draft pretty well. Drafting the Russian guys, we saw with Rodion Amirov. They took Shoshnikov a while back. STA is a great player as well. Korshkov might be a good player as well. So they do like drafting Russians, and I do trust their scouting staff.
Yeah, and Josh Cloak just tweeted this. He believes this is the first time in Leafs draft history that they have not chosen a North American player with their first 4 picks. So That's really interesting that they're going a lot more European this year, but they do have 1 more pick left in the 4th round, but we haven't gotten there. Pick that was just made was Chicago's, and this will be the last pick we talk about. Michael Krudel played for Sparta. He's a defenseman, 6'3", 202, so he's a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about him?
Yeah, I do like Michael Krudel. Chicago does need to so we have Ian Mitchell coming up, who's top prospect from Denver. Defensively, they sort of lost like their depth defensively with the prospects, because Adam Boqvist just came up, Nick Beaudin's coming up soon, and then obviously Ian Mitchell. I did like Michael Krudel. Didn't watch too much of him. Watched a few games of him when he was playing for the Czech national team. So, some stuff to like with him. And again, the Blackhawks are good with drafting Czech guys. Dominik Kubalik, or they snagged Dominik Kubalik in that trade. So, yeah.
All right. And some more info around the Domi potential deal is coming out. It's believed to be around, this hasn't been confirmed. Nobody's tweeted this. But the rumors are it's going to be around 2 years, $5 million AAV. So we'll see. Probably by the time we finish recording, that'll fully be out. But interesting to see that.
That's like the Kubalik deal that Raine was talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So would you rather have Dominik Kubalik or Max Domi?
Give me Kubalik. So.
All right. But with that, we're going to stop talking about actual picks specifically. And I want to ask both of you, because Aiden, you are not somebody who follows the draft very closely, but I want to get your take on this. What was your favorite pick of the draft for any team? And what was your least favorite pick so far of the draft?
Okay, so I'll start off with the least favorite pick, because we always like to end off positively. I think it's the Jack Quinn over Marco Rossi that just had me just super confused. It was just so hard to see that happen. You watch Jack Quinn, and how do you not see that Marco Rossi was the driving force of that line? And it's just because of the size. But for my favorite pick, I'd probably say in the 2nd round. Who was it here? Who ended up taking him? Yeah, so the San Jose Sharks, they took Thomas Bordeleau with the 38th pick. Thomas Bordeaux is actually heading to Michigan of all places, so that's probably why one of the main guys I got to scout a lot. So the cool thing with Michigan, they have a historic freshman class coming in. They have 2 top 3 prospects next year, in Owen Power and Kent Johnson, but also first round pick this year in Brendan Brisson. So they had numerous players coming in, and Thomas Bordelot sort of flew under the radar. He was actually one of the most productive players on that national team last year, alongside of Jake Sanderson. He's a legit player, and I think he's going to be a real good fit for them.
All right, Aiden.
All right.
What is your least favorite pick and your favorite pick?
It's hard to go second because Raine knows it so well. It's like I got to agree with him. I don't like the Jack Quinn pick, but I don't know. There's some other picks that I wasn't too sure on. Caden Gooley for Montreal. I heard some bad things. Apparently, the Leafs were looking at getting him. I don't know if he's going to be as good. I know he has a brother in the league. I think the brother's going to end up being better than him. For my favorite pick, though, it's got to be Tim Stützle or Stützle, just because of the way that they announced the pick with Alex Trebek. And I do think that it was a good pick as well. Like, they could have gone with Raymond, but I think just the fact that Stützle can play center as well. And, Ottawa already has, Tkachuk as their big winger. I think they needed some more help up the middle. So maybe they look at putting Stützle as their center. I know he can play wing as well, but we'll see what happens there. So yeah, I think Stützle will be my favorite pick. And then, sorry, Buffalo, but you guys aren't looking too good. Jack Quinn is my least favorite pick.
All right, and I'll round us out before we do our hot takes. I'm going to give 2 favorite picks because I think both of these guys should have gotten it. First of all, I'm going to go Ozzy Weisblatt, not because of the player, but because of the way that they announced it and the celebration he had afterwards. If you didn't see, I think it was the GM of the Sharks, I'm not 100% on that, signed his name because his mother is deaf. And that was really cool. And his entire family was there and they just lost their minds. So I thought that was great. But I'm going to go with Yaroslav Askarov as my favorite pick because I think he's going to be the goalie of the future. And for the Predators to be able to transition from Pekka Rinne to Askarov is insane. In terms of my least favorite pick, I'm going to again take 2. Shakir Makamadullin. Even though it's a great name, I hate it. It's not a very good pick. And of course, Yegor Chinakov. But with that, we need to do our hot takes.
Yo, if you look at Sportsnet.ca right now and you look at like the tracker, the Leafs' 15th overall pick is blank. There's no Amarov anymore.
I just noticed that.
Did they just trade him? Did they already sign him and trade him? I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
Just a glitch.
Nothing on Twitter, but that's weird. We'll have to watch that. Hot takes. We'll see if it breaks in the next 5 minutes if anything happened. Who wants to go first? Oh, he's back. That was weird.
I guess I can go first.
Do any of you have one prepared?
I'm thinking of one on the spot.
All right,
I could say something crazy, but
say something crazy.
Okay, fine. All right, here we go. I think this offseason there's going to be a big trade, huge trade. One of the captains is going to get traded. One of the captains who just won the Stanley Cup is going to get traded. I think Steven Stamkos will be dealt by the Tampa Bay Lightning this offseason.
It's not possible.
Yeah, that's interesting.
He has a no move.
It's going to happen, Connor. That's why it's a hot take. That's why it's a hot take.
You'd have to waive his no move, and I just don't see that happening. But it's a good hot take. Good hot take. Raine, do you have one?
Yeah, this is a homer pick, but I think it actually could happen. I think the Indianapolis Colts can win the AFC South and make it to the AFC Championship game. I think they're that good. Have you seen that defense?
Really? Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that defense is legit. And Philip Rivers will get used to it. T.Y. Hilton will wake up, and I think their AFC Championship mentality. I think they could actually make it.
I mean, it is the worst division in football, so there's a chance.
Not anymore. I would say not anymore, but the Texans have made it the worst division. No, Dallas's division. They're the worst division.
Yeah, Dallas is bad. Yeah, Dallas can still make the playoffs. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah. last year the Colts at the AFC South was crazy good. Actually, no, it wasn't. Jacksonville sucked, but yeah, usually there's like,
Jacksonville's surprising this year. Like Minshew's actually playing decent.
it's weird, man. Minshew's actually pretty good. Jacob Robinson's a beast.
Yeah, I know he's good.
Oh, he's a beast. So it works out for them. But hey, maybe it doesn't work out. Colts don't make the AFC Championship game, and next year they trade for Matthew Stafford. I'll take it.
Or this year. You never know.
I'll take it. I love that.
You might have to give us your first round pick though.
I'll take it. Like, we don't need the picks anymore. Our team's deep. We just need a quarterback. Like, if Andrew Luck was, their quarterback, oh my God, he'd be so good. But he retired early.
Yeah.
Sucks.
I hope it happens. I do want Stafford to go to a team where he has a shot at winning the Super Bowl because I just don't see it happening with the Lions, and I think he's kind of falling off a cliff. I'm sure when he leaves the Patricia system and he goes to a better team, like he's gonna be MVP caliber, I think.
Yeah, me too. But people sleep on him because he's, playing for the Lions.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody sleeps on the Lions. Nobody knows that the Lions are a team in the NFL.
Yeah. Hey, but they have talent, man, and like
They have talent. You're right.
Those leads, man, like they're a playoff team. Like last year, if Stafford doesn't get injured, they make it to the playoffs. So what I see, he was MVP caliber before the injury.
For sure, definitely, you're right. But with Patricia, like
Yeah,
I don't think so. Like if they have Jim Caldwell still, I think they'd make it. But no.
Yeah.
Actually, I have another hot take. Actually, talking about football, NFL. I think the Lions will fire Matt Patricia by the trade deadline, and then next year they're gonna rehire Jim Caldwell as the coach.
Oh.
Yeah.
You think Jim Caldwell will take it though?
I think so. I think if the GM is gone too, they have to fire both GM and Patricia, and then he'll come back. Yeah. I think the Fords really like him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
All right. So we're getting 4 hot takes today then. Because, well, we'll see if mine is hot or not. My hot take, Doc Rivers completely changes the Philadelphia Flyers, and they go to the NBA final next year.
The Flyers.
76ers.
Did I say Flyers?
Well, that would be quite a hot take. He switches sports. Cool. He goes to the final.
NBA finals? Unheard of.
Philadelphia 76ers. Oh, that was a brutal one right there.
Happens to the best of us. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So on that complete and utter failure, we end. We say thank you to Raine for coming and joining us for this extra long. Well, I say extra long, probably around 2.5 hour podcast, and talking all things draft with us as it is still happening. But yes, we really, really appreciate you coming on. We will leave links to everything he's done down below, including McKean's, Puck Preps, Oakville Blades, OHL Network, his U Sports stuff, his Twitter account, everything. The Year 5 Collective, which we didn't even talk about. His fan-sided stuff, although I don't think you're right for them anymore.
Not anymore. I'm probably going to join back soon, but I don't think I have the time right now.
Well, we'll link to everything, including his Flip Snack, so you can go and check that out. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Next week is our first week on Spirit Live. So we'll be doing the show live on Spirit Live. You can check us out. We're Wednesdays 3 to 4. We're also going to hopefully stream on YouTube, although we'll see if my computer can handle it because we were going to try that with this episode and it just didn't really work. But keep an eye on all of our social medias. You can find me on Twitter at CWG Somerville. You can find Raine at Bringer of Rain. Aiden, you can find on Instagram.
With an E.
Yeah, with an E.
Never forget
Aiden, you can find on Instagram at
Aiden Silliphant, just Aiden Silliphant.
And come on, Unlimited.
At Unlimited Pod on Instagram as well. Matt Patricia, roast coming tomorrow.
Yes, and you can check out, I just moved or announced a move to Fansided with my MLS podcast. So our first episode's going up hopefully Wednesday night, maybe as late as Friday. We don't really know. It depends on when I can edit it. But thank you for listening. We will see you next week, where we will hopefully have Alex Pietrangelo as a Toronto Maple Leaf. Peace.